Greetings, everyone, and welcome to an especially speculative episode of Monster Party.
Monster Party! It's speculative. It's fantastic. It's great.
The future. It's the past. It's the future past.
Yes, it is the future past.
Yes.
Speaking of future past, who are you, sir?
I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Strothe.
And I'm James Gonis.
And for this episode,
Future Past.
Future Past, it's got a little bit of everything that you love because it is where all the things that you love started.
It's literary.
It's literary. It's also film. It's also comic books.
It's several mediums.
Yeah, all mediums, really, when you think about it. And the topic is...
What is this amazing topic?
Sci-Fi Trailblazers.
Sci-Fi Trailblazers.
Blazing trails.
Blazing trails. We're talking the granddaddies.
The fathers.
The forefathers.
The grandfathers.
The granddaddies.
The start.
Who created, popularized this wonderful genre that we love so much.
Yes.
Science fiction.
Created templates for many of the most famous kind of stories and franchises.
Visionaries.
Yeah, true trailblazers. Where there was nothing, they created a path where many others followed. Yeah. And we're talking the greats here.
We're going to be talking about greats, but I mean, how could you possibly?
Trailblazers,
yes,
that's right.
Yes.
We have as our guest.
Speaking of greats,
that's right. We have a return guest. This man is a writer, screenwriter, novelist, producer, director, fellow monster kid, and amazing cinema historian. And we've had him on before, and we can't wait to have him again. COURTNEY JOYNER.
COURTNEY JOYNER.
Welcome.
Wow.
Another honorary member.
That's true.
Yes.
Member.
I mean, the history that you
Honored
have.
to be honorary, by the way.
You have so much history planted in that brain of yours.
And
you amaze me.
With little else.
And it's your first time in the new studio.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Very, very impressive. In fact, I'm here constantly gazing at the Cyclops from Seventh Voyage of Sinbad.
How do you like that? Yeah.
And just to mention some of your credits, of course, TRANCERS III, The Lurking Fear, Lovecraft, Prison, From a Whisper to a Scream, Dr. Mordrid, love that one, Puppet Master 3,
the best one.
The new novel, NEMO Rising, which is also being released in another format, which we'll be talking about.
We're going to talk about that later.
Yes.
See, we're going to sprinkle a little intrigue.
Yeah.
And then we're going to revisit.
Right.
Well, Courtney, thanks for being with us again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me to this boiling stew of inspiration.
I thought that was going to go somewhere else, but thank you very much. So now,
Speaking of stew, why don't we start?
We're going to start. I was about to start
with the granddaddy.
With the granddaddy. Now, you writing this book, NEMO Rising,
Yes.
leads us perfectly into, I guess, kind of the first who really popularized science fiction in a way that made it palatable over the years to a wider audience. It wasn't just a niche thing. It wasn't just a literary experiment that someone tried. And we're talking Jules Verne.
Jules Verne.
Who doesn't know the name Jules Verne?
Right. Well, you know, the thing is, when these guys began really writing these books, and of course Jules Verne was French, Wait a minute, what? Yes, indeed. We were reading translations. You have to remember that the form itself was essentially brand new, and Edgar Allan Poe had really only invented the mystery story not that much before that, with Murders in the Rue Morgue.
The detective, the true detective mystery.
Exactly, and so all of these writers kind of were not that far apart in not only just lineage, but in age and the era in which their work appeared. And the thing with Verne, particularly now, when you look at it, is putting it in the, if you will, the right years that he created the work, and most of it was during the time of the American Civil War. And, of course, that is actually the background to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and more specifically, Mysterious Island. People kind of forget its grounding in, actually, of all things, U.S. history rather than the history of France.
So for people who don't really know, Jules Verne, he was born in 1828. And so when he started writing these books, you're talking about like in 1864 or 65. I mean, this is
he was in his 40s
Yeah.
when he had his big popular success after Around the World in 80 Days and Journey to the Center of the Earth. But he was an armchair adventurer. He was because his brother was actually the traveler.
Yeah.
And he would come back and tell Jules about where he had been and what he had seen and what have you. And
I went to the center of the earth.
More like, I visited Italy, but yes, and he would write about it. But of course, with something like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, everyone is primarily familiar with it because of the Walt Disney movie.
Right.
And if they go back to the book, they're always a little surprised because so much of it is actually about sea life. And a great deal of it has to deal with fish.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
describing that world.
Describing that world, because even
It was
that
new to people, to
exploration
readers.
was completely new, because submarine technology was, of course, something of the Civil War when it just started with the Turtle and things like the Monitor and the Merrimack and these giant ironclads for which the Nautilus was very much modeled after.
Right.
So, Courtney, my understanding was the original concept of the submarine, like in the Disney movie, it's like an anti-war thing, and in the book it was more like against a slavery thing, right?
Correct.
But that was not his original idea.
Verne always wanted to, I think, put conflict around the world behind literally every single story. And one of the most particularly with Mysterious Island, and of course, I used a great deal of that background because, of course, very famously, the heroes of Mysterious Island escaped from a Confederate prison camp. They escaped from Libby Prison.
Right.
But here's the problem there, is that I don't know, many people don't realize that, of course, Mysterious Island was written after the success of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Right.
Okay. So the publisher gets this manuscript, which is very much like Robinson Crusoe, but there's no Captain Nemo in it. And so they said, well, wait a minute. You've got to put Captain Nemo in there, and then we'll have a book that we can sell. So he's like, okay.
Put Nemo in everything.
So, yeah, exactly. So he throws Captain Nemo.
Journey to the center of Nemo.
Yes, into this book, completely destroying his own chronology, because 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea actually takes place the years following the Civil War. So now, during the Civil War, Captain Nemo shows up older than he is in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and dies.
So the first alternate history.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Really a trailblazer.
Yeah, Jules Verne was a trailblazer. He's created the DC multiverse before it ever existed.
Now, were there speculative fiction writers before Verne? Was he really the pioneer? Or were there contemporaries, maybe a little bit?
There was always a
popular,
few. There were
most
people who
successful.
dabbled in it, right? I mean,
Yes. But I think where people always go to Verne was his own interest in technology and his forecasting of things such as television and things like that. And, of course, again, transportation technology.
Right.
Well, the balloon, too.
Absolutely.
I mean people go, oh, the
Airships,
balloon,
yeah.
the balloon. But, I mean,
he
that was...
foresaw the balloon.
No, it's like using the balloon to go around the world kind of a thing. I mean, yeah.
And that is a constant when it comes to even modern science fiction, is taking what technology we have now and then just extrapolating and building on that, and the Nautilus, my God, what a perfect example of the ultimate thing that you could do with the submarine.
Right, which, of course, truly existed, but not completely, and
Sure.
certainly not in the fashion that
Nothing
Verne
like that.
imagined it.
Yeah.
Right.
But also, too, he seemed to want, even with something like From the Earth to the Moon, where in fact the moon is basically a giant bullet.
Yeah. Fired in a cannon.
That's right, fired out of a cannon by the Baltimore
Don't try this
Gun
at home.
Club. Yeah. But he went in that direction of things that, if you will, were grounded in more of a sense of plausibility, as opposed to Wells, who really, time travel and, of course, alien invasion and things like
Yeah,
that.
but that's why I always felt that Verne he did the kind of extrapolated the science stuff, but he had a fanciful element to his
Absolutely.
things too.
And
that
there was,
that really
adventure.
melded, that really kind of perfectly blended. Because some of it was like a speeding bullet going towards the moon, but the way he did them, it was presented in a way that was just really fun, really believable in its own way.
Well, there was a tone to certainly, I would say, a tone in the films that we were familiar with and that we
Sure.
grew up with. If you watch 20,000 Leagues, and then you watch Journey to the Center of the Earth, and then you watch Mysterious Island, and even
First Men in the Moon.
and First Men in the well, that was Wells, or From the Earth to
Nice
the Moon,
one.
which is kind of a little
Have another drink, Sean.
yes, but that's all right. That's all right.
Is it?
But there is, if you will, a lighthearted tone, and in fact, because of the success of 20,000 Leagues, Hollywood kind of went Jules Verne crazy. They did a ton of Jules Verne movies, including things like Michael Strogoff with Kurt Jurgens and
Master of the World.
Master of the World, absolutely. Valley of the Dragons with
Sure.
Desiree
Oh,
Nanova,
yeah. With Off on a Comet. or
on a
On a
Comet.
Comet, yeah.
Yes, indeed. American International was, in fact, going to do after Master of the World. Because Master of the World was going to be their 20,000 Leagues. That was going to be their big road show. And it didn't perform as well as they thought it was going to. And so, but if you get certain Dell comics from the period, you look in the back, and there's a, win a visit to the set of Off on a Comet. And there you go.
That's a concept that I have struggled with a little bit.
Yeah, well,
A
and
science
the
fiction
movie
concept.
Valley of the Dragon, the movie is just kind of ridiculous.
ridiculous.
Well, that's
But it's
Valley,
so
of the,
much fun.
Valley of the stock footage.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can't get a fresh lizard.
So the idea is that
calling Hal Roach.
really.
What was the date? What was the date on that one, by the way?
Valley of Dragons was
During-
1961. Caesar DeNova, Sean McClory. But the idea was like these two guys who are going to
a duel.
do a duel. A comet passes and somehow sucks them off of Earth onto the comet where there's dinosaurs.
Yeah.
It's just
And they
so-
get like a bruise. They're fine.
And there's like native women there and stuff.
Like, why don't we all live on comets?
Exactly.
But as far as lizard-
what's the problem?
But as far as the lizards go, this started to be a common practice. Not everyone can pay. It's like we don't have the time to get Ray Harryhausen in here to do stop motion.
yeah.
So let's,
It was like-
people have been doing these iguanas. That seems to be working.
Yeah,
So
it helped spawn the birth of the SPCA. Those poor lizards, my God.
I know, especially that one shot where they're kind of twisting.
I hate seeing them fight.
Whenever they would have like the baby gator
Yeah.
against an iguana.
Which is
Oy.
the Castle Films Battle of the Giants.
That's right.
Remember?
Yes, which
And
is
it was reused in other
that's right.
movies. It's like the
Constantly.
poor iguana and baby gator.
Oh, poor guy.
Yeah. But there's
I wonder if he's still around.
the gator.
He's in the old lizard's home.
but the Czechoslovakian film, the Karl Zeman,
Yes.
The Fabulous World
Fabulous
of
World
Jules
of
Verne.
Jules Verne. That's amazing.
So amazing. That I think we've talked
I've
about
never
that
seen
movie.
that.
Oh, it's how do you describe it? It's like this combination of live action
What is
and
it?
stop motion.
It's stop motion
The
too?
movie is kind of like a Robur the Conqueror kind of storyline, right?
It is very much so, but it done in the Georges Méliès style.
yeah,
very
yeah,
much
it's
so.
Done like it's done like
So, like, how old is this movie?
it's 50s, like 58.
50s, okay.
And
When you say stop motion, is it like...
it's combined with live actors.
Okay, so it's stop motion dinosaurs or creatures or whatever? Or?
Machines, and like when they show like the underwater guys in the suits underwater, they're a little stop motion.
Wow.
And
I
there
guess
is
very inventive.
the moment with the Nautilus ramming the USS Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
Wow.
It's wonderfully done. And they even do some things with cardboard.
Yeah, it looks
creations
like
that
kind of
are-
engraving. It's hard. It's
just-
hard to describe it.
Is it
very
sort of an
wonderful.
overview of Jules Verne?
No,
Is that
no.
what-
It's a story about this kind of mad genius guy who makes his ultimate weapon. It's going
Mm-hmm.
to destroy. And I don't think it's Robor specifically. Or the version I've seen too is it's the one that was dubbed and released to like American
That's right.
television.
And in fact, American International TV are the ones who picked it up.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I've never seen the original Czechoslovakian in language version, but Karl Zeman also did it. He did like the Fabulous World of Baron Munchausen.
Yes.
He also did an On the Comet one later in the 70s, which I've never seen.
I've never seen that either, and he was kind of a real. Speaking of trailblazers, there you go. He really was, because it was a matter of a visual sophistication, really, to like kids' movies.
Yeah, yeah.
That honestly, certainly we weren't used to. here in
Sounds
this country.
incredible.
And I just
can't
I just
believe I
think
haven't
it-
seen this.
Yeah, and it really, to me at least, it captures a look and feel of Jules Verne's to me. You know, it's really
Well,
cool.
and the other thing too with Verne, of course, I think was now why people have gotten interested in him again, because he wrote during the Industrial Revolution. He is considered the father of steampunk.
Steampunk.
That's
yes.
true, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And because just that was when he was active, and that's what was going on in the world
If-
when he was creating his work.
Yeah, if he had not done that, there'd be like 9 tables at Comic-Con.
Yes.
Sell anything.
That's right.
Yeah.
And also, like,
Yes.
as far as Hollywood, though, you think about
And no goggles.
No goggles. No
But like
kooky goggles.
20,000 Leagues, Mysterious Island, Journey to the Center of the Earth. There's been multiple films,
Versions, yeah.
miniseries,
Yeah.
TV movies. I mean, they even did, more recently they did the versions with The Rock.
Oh, yeah, they did
Dwayne
Mysterious Island.
Yeah,
yes,
Journey
with
to
Dwayne Johnson. Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson. Like I said, yeah, they're still
But you know,
updating.
the thing is, though, with like any version of Mysterious Island, what they're really doing is they are playing off of the Charles Schneer,
Yes.
the Ray Harryhausen
True,
picture,
true.
because there's no gigantism in the novel. That
I was just
all
about to
invented
say,
Right.
for,
I've never
Ray Harryhausen.
I've never read that novel, and so there's no giant anything.
There's no
right?
giant crab.
No.
There is not.
No.
That was courtesy of Ray.
Yeah.
yeah, but it's a perfect.
There's
fit
no
to me.
giant drawn butter or tartar sauce.
Or giant
Right.
bee. Oh. Well, I think
Oh, the giant bee! I love the
That's
giant
the greatest.
bee. Yes.
That's
coolest.
that really
wonderful.
blew my mind as a kid when I first saw that.
And also Herbert Lom as Captain Nemo. He's my favorite Captain
He is.
Nemo.
He is.
He's
the
Wait,
ultimate
he's your
Captain Nemo.
favorite?
He is
actually
he's
is.
Not
wonderful.
James Mason. No.
That's a terrible James Mason.
Yeah, what was that?
I actually
It's a hard voice. He's got such a great
James
voice.
Mason is great, has a great voice, but I think I agree. I think Lom is the best.
I
mean, as far as that
actually
character.
helped Herbert write a novel.
No.
I did. We had the same manager for a very
Oh
brief
my God, I
period.
would
He
have
was
loved to
working
have
on a
met him.
novel called Dr. Guillotine, which he did finish. And he asked me to read what he had written and given notes, and he had done a really nice job. But we would get together. I'd get these lovely phone calls. Courtney, are you ready to go to work?
Wow.
See, now that's a good Herbert Lom.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Wow,
Now, he was.
Did his
awesome.
eye twitch like in the close
I took some friends over to the Beverly Hills Hotel where he always stayed, and he did his Dreyfus eye twitch.
Oh my God. That's classic.
He was very accommodating.
Wow,
That's
that's a
fantastic.
beautiful man.
But yeah, that's true. That you're right though. The Mysterious Island, kind of everybody works off of that. The Harryhausen.
Oh,
template.
absolutely. As if they think, oh, well, this has to be because nobody wants to read.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah. So in the original novel, it's just an island that has animals, and they're just conquering the wild.
It's a volcanic island.
Yeah.
And
Right.
yes. And again, the exploration of the world was still also brand new
Sure.
when these novels were
Right.
being written. That's really one of the great key things, because now we know absolutely everything about everything, or
Sure.
we go online or whatever it is. But here, going forth into this continent, that continent, that's why
palm tree.
exactly. That's why
Right,
Journey
right.
to
No, back in the
Center of Earth
1860s,
works.
yeah.
It's like
Okay.
every
Right.
island
Yes.
was a mysterious island.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Oh, nice one.
Now,
Yes.
if we're talking about Journey to the Center of the Earth, which pre-show, Larry and I were having a little bit of a discussion, and
AKA argument.
argument, yes, as it normally goes,
About Pat Boone.
about all of it,
No.
about that whole movie.
It's
I
a
think it's a
great-
giant snooze.
No, James Mason.
I'm not impressed.
James
with
yes,
Mason
that.
is in it.
absolutely.
And Pat Boone, come on.
Pat Boone.
He's a
Why?
charming guy.
Sure,
He was a very big.
I'd play a round of golf with him.
Arlene Dahl, hello?
Sure.
Good,
Why does
good
it
trip to
take-
doc. It takes.
Excuse me, Diane Baker.
Diane Baker.
Well, she's kinda
definitely.
small,
She is.
you know.
Yeah, but Pat Boone's in love with her.
Yeah,
But see,
that's true.
if
It
you have
takes-
a big budget movie like that,
Yes.
big budget studio movie,
Yep.
and you have fucking iguanas,
Thank you.
give me a break.
Okay,
that
okay.
was- and it takes a million years to get to them.
Look,
But
if
that
I
was
can say one thing
20th
about
Century Fox,
yes.
kind of, that was their way.
And let me tell you something, Sean. I know how you guys like you toss away the lizard thing.
Yes,
those
I
are
do.
the
Yeah,
best.
yeah, I do too.
Those are the best looking lizard dinosaurs.
What does
The
that say?
sailback-
Yeah, and I'm sure they
No.
were treated very nicely.
Well, I don't know. I wasn't there,
crawling
but they
around
look.
the giant
But
mushrooms
even
and everything.
as a little, I've always said this. Even as a little kid, I could be 10 years old and I say that's an iguana.
Yep.
Like,
Right.
I don't care. Like
Yeah.
stop motion, even if it's a bad stop motion, even if it's like a puppet, just give me something. Don't give me an animal that I can see in my backyard.
Where's your suspension of disbelief as a 10-year-old kid?
I watched that movie and I thought, I'm a child and I could get to the center of the earth faster than these guys.
Okay,
Faster than following on Erasmus.
okay. Look, everyone's jumping on. You know, I want to defend this
blows.
movie. No, it doesn't
I
blow.
love this
it's a
movie.
great movie.
I love this
and
movie.
they use real caverns. They go into real caves.
I like the
in that.
cavern part.
are
Now
cool.
I'm more like reading a Jules Verne book where I'm exploring the cavern. This is cool. Why'd you have to ruin it with iguanas?
But here's now one thing, guys. We need to definitely tie in with both Mysterious Island and Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Okay.
Bernard Herrmann.
Exactly.
Well,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
that
Where's
is-
your music
James.
appreciation,
I-
sir?
100% agree.
No Bernard Herrmann score movie would be a total failure.
Right.
It's the best part of the movie.
No.
And I would agree.
I do like the duck.
Well, what about the whole sequence when there's all that jeweled wall and James Mason goes on, let me take a little bit and takes a little...
What voice are you doing?
he takes the little jewel off.
He's not
and then
Asian.
I wasn't doing that, but he takes a little jewel off and then there's like a little bit of water that comes through and then more water. Just by moving that one little jewel kind of messes up the whole thing. And I love
I
that.
see. It's a metaphor
Yes, absolutely.
for your life.
We
Don't take the jewel out of the package.
we just shouldn't go fooling around down there.
That's true.
Look, I think you guys are like jumping on this a little too harshly.
Larry, would you say though, the oversized iguana versus any of the stop motion creatures in Mysterious Island, which would you take?
Oh, of course, the Mysterious
Yeah, I
Island
mean, that's the
creatures.
thing.
But I still,
It's a way
but
better
look,
movie.
as lizards go, you know,
lizards-
in movies,
the lizards
there's only,
I've known.
I only. Well, can I say my piece, please?
Yes, go
There's
ahead.
only one issue that I have in the movie regarding the lizards, but I'm just going to say I'm going to go out on a limb here. As lizards being used as dinosaurs in movies go, I thought the sailback dinosaurs looked really cool for lizards.
Well, no. I
And
don't
the only thing
I
I
don't disagree.
Okay, and the only thing I have to say, the thing that I don't like, is there's a moment towards the end when there's the fire lizard. He's kind of red, and he's kind of leaning towards them. They're about to go up this volcano chute, and Arlene Dahl screams, and it looks like he's being held in place by a little wire, and that's my only issue. But other than that. And you know they have a really cool shot where James Mason he's running, he's running away, and there's a shot where the lizard opens his mouth and sticks out its sticky tongue, and the point of view is from inside the dinosaur lizard's mouth.
I'm sorry, I really don't know what you're attempting.
Yeah, but it's like,
We'll get there.
It's a shot. It's a shot they do. It's an interesting choice. There's a shot. Do you remember the movie? Hello?
I do, yes,
It's a
but-
camera. The camera's inside the mouth of the lizard, and the tongue sticks out, and it grabs James Mason. Do you remember that?
Yes. Come on, Henry Levin, who directed 2 Matt Helm movies. Come on, he was.
Oh my
awesome.
gosh!
He finally worked it out.
Yes, exactly. But that's the thing too with Journey to the Center of the Earth. What 20th Century Fox traditionally they were the lizard outfit.
Oh, really? It was
The
all-
LB Abbott group always used it. They did it again in Irwin Allen's Lost World. So
Yeah.
this was
that one.
Okay, no, I'm
which
not
was
happy.
not good.
No,
but that's
see.
the thing. This was kind of their go-to
Right,
approach.
right. They didn't have Harryhausen. They didn't have
No.
you
No,
know,
and that's what they did.
I actually prefer The Lost World because I think I'll tell you why. Because there's so much nonsense from beginning to end that I find it more entertaining.
Excuse me, you prefer Frosty the Poodle?
over Gertrude the
Yeah.
Duck.
I don't.
Wow.
Who would win? Who would
There's
win?
more-
That's-
Gertrude the
now
Duck
that's
versus
revealing.
Frosty the Poodle.
I'll take the poodle over Pat Boone, who's like.
For
Well,
listeners,
you do have the kind of the hot cave girl.
yeah, you do. Now, for listeners who are
yeah.
not
Now-
it was probably Richard Zanuck's girlfriend.
for listeners who are not familiar, for listeners who are not familiar, if you go onto YouTube and look at the trailer for The Lost World,
Which is the Irwin
Allen version.
production.
There's this whole point where they're going through the cast. Michael Rennie,
Claude Rains.
and you get to the end and they go, and Frosty the Poodle. And it's one of those moments where you just start laughing. And I don't know if it was done to try to get a laugh, because it doesn't make you, it's not like, and Gertrude the Duck.
Speaking of The Lost World, I want to tell you David Hedison's story real quick.
Oh, David Hedison.
Yes,
Oh.
David Hedison, who just passed away. I had written a movie, very low budget thing, for Andrew Stevens' company, and we were shooting down at his offices in Encino. And Fred and Ray was actually shooting the same day. Wow. And David Hedison was in Fred's movie, and he's waiting downstairs patiently to be called onto set, and he was dressed in like a naval uniform or something. And I can't remember what Bond film was out. I want to say Die Another Day or something like that. And one of the grips comes over and he just casually starts talking to David Hedison and says, yeah, I just saw the James Bond movie. Have you seen the Bond film yet? David
Felix Leiter?
No, I haven't. Exactly. And he goes, oh, I really dig James Bond. Do you like James Bond? He goes, oh, yes, I do. David Hedison was such a gentleman. He did not say, hey, moron. I was in two of them. No, he just sat there and nodded and smiled right along and didn't humiliate this kid at all.
That's
awesome.
a class act.
I was very impressed by that.
I've always loved him.
Yeah, he's good. He was
I think
always
he's one of those guys that's great in everything.
I probably wouldn't have done that. I probably would have laid into the kid. But
Listen,
The kid
clown.
might have been pleasantly surprised to find that he was Felix Leiter.
Oh, that's true. That's
That's
true.
true.
Yeah.
But he was probably too modest.
Yes, he was. He was.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yes.
But between David Hedison and Richard Basehart, they were really the glue that was holding that Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea show together.
Sure.
I mean, their
They were-
gravitas
Yeah.
made a lot of that nonsense at least semi-palatable.
Basehart was really a substantial actor, and of course, and he used to like to cocktail it up a bit. But the thing is, though, I mean, when you get into the episode, like when he turns into a werewolf, which was just
Did it with class.
a Halloween perennial, that was,
Yeah.
But I think it became a bit of a problem. Even Hedison said that it just became Monster of the Week.
Right.
Yes,
Well,
that's
which
true.
every
Where the hell
Owen
is
Allen
the-
show did.
Yeah, that's true.
Where's the sea view going that every time it stops, a blob from outer space or another mutant or Vincent Price, it comes on board
Well,
and
it's the same.
creates havoc?
It's the Space 1999 conundrum too.
Sure,
It's a
yeah.
moon lost
Yeah.
floating in space, but every episode there's an alien
Yeah.
they come across. Or
You
something.
might have less problems if you just surface more often.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's,
Let's stick to spies.
Right,
you know?
right.
But getting back to Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Oh, yes.
you know, I mean, it's a film that, as a kid growing up, it was one of those films that was on KTVU Channel 2 on a regular
It was
basis.
always on, yeah.
And I just loved watching it. To me, as a kid, I was able to go to, here in California now, throughout the country, they have these, there's this place called the Moaning Cave, or places where you can go in and go through these great giant caverns or something. And I always loved going through these, but it was always like a partial thing. You would go through for a little bit, and then you'd have to go back up the stairs. And for here, this adventure story that tells of this journey to the center of the
The
Earth.
concept's great.
See, this is the thing. This is exactly what the value is to what these guys created, because it inspired you to explore.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Even these movies, even the worst film adaptations, if any one of them drove some kid to find the novel, or he just accidentally discovers it in the school library or something, or picks up a ratty old paperback, then, I mean, that's a real triumph. And I think that's what's so great when they constantly go back. They look at Jules Verne, they look at H.G. Wells, they look at Arthur Conan Doyle, Edgar Rice Burroughs, it doesn't matter who it is, and then suddenly somebody is picking up a book again.
Right.
Well, you have to credit Disney not only for 20,000 Leagues, but for some of the overseas parks in keeping Jules Verne alive.
That's
true.
That's
True.
quite true. Yeah. Disney Sea
Disney Sea.
That's
is amazing.
And
got
Disney Sea is in...
Tokyo.
In Tokyo, yeah,
They've
and
got
it's the sister park to Disneyland, and it's just a wholly unique thing. We've talked about it before, but it's an ocean-based theme, and each land is a port.
Yes.
And then one of them is this Jules Verne land, and they've got Journey to the Center of the Earth, which to me, that's the best version of Journey to the Center of the Earth.
And that's like a major attraction in that park.
Yeah.
A century after the novel.
Absolutely.
And in
that's pretty amazing. If you think about it that
Disneyland
way.
Paris.
And Paris too, yes.
It's very Jules Verne.
where they still have the full Nautilus that you can walk on and look out the the window and see the squid and everything.
Oh,
and also Space Mountain is done in kind of a Jules Verne steampunk kind of way.
Really?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, also the impact that Harper Goff had with all of his designs for 20,000 Leagues, that literally, from the moment of the Disney film, that was kind of carried on, I mean, almost unanimously to practically every production
That's
after.
true. Yeah.
It's incredible how many Nautiluses are inspired by that original.
Well, again, he went back to what Jules Verne was writing about, which was the ironclads, which is what the battleships were at the time the novel was written.
All those rivets You make it way more imposing.
I love. Let's face it. That 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the design of that Nautilus in the Disney movie is just fantastic.
just
And then
holds up
as it
perfect.
goes through the water and you see the glowing eyes, which are really the
Yeah.
ports. I mean, that looks so great. You know, it reminds me. There was a toy. God, there was a toy. I've talked about this before. There's a toy that I wanted so badly, and it's a little metal Nautilus. It's a wind-up green metal toy. Now, there's
Based on the Disney one?
it's kind of based on it, but it doesn't look quite like it. It's tin, but there's a design flaw. What is it? Well, guys, it's made of metal. It's designed to go in the water.
Every kid's going to put it in
And
the
so
water.
the funny thing, when I saw this as a kid, and I'll remember seeing it at the Wooden Horse toy store, it was like $7, and I wanted it so badly.
That might as well be $1,000.
A million.
Yeah,
It might as well be $1 million. And it was a key wind up. There's a little cork you pulled out of the top. You would wind it up, put it in, and then the little propeller would go, and you'd put it in the water, and it would go. And it says Nautilus on it, and it was so cool. But to find one now in its box, in mint condition, it's so difficult. Why? Because most kids, you took it and you put it in the water.
That's it. Yep.
And so one day, Matt. And and I mentioned this. I remember one time when I was going to San Francisco State, I was looking at apartments, and the woman who showed us this one apartment, apparently people were in the process of leaving, and we walked through, and I looked on the ground in the apartment, and there was a beat up Nautilus. It was right there. It was right by the front
What are
door.
the
I
chances?
could have easily have just
weird.
picked it up.
really weird.
But I was a good,
Taunting you.
it was because I walked out and I've been thinking about it. I thought, God, I
But it
should
was
have
beat up, though,
was
right?
beat up.
You don't want
But
If
that.
it was
still.
mint,
No.
if it was mint,
Well,
no.
Disney, trademarked the Nautilus, and especially its
Design.
its design and its silhouette. So getting the license to do it, there have been some Japanese. I've got one that's about this big, and
It's like
That's a
2
great
feet.
one.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's beautiful, and there are so many super elaborate ones, and oh my gosh, you see these recreations
Yes.
that these guys make that are,
Yeah.
I mean, they're just absolutely astounding. But getting the license to do it is very, very difficult, especially if you really want it to reflect the movie. So, without spending a fortune, you can go to your Hallmark store and get the Nautilus Christmas decoration.
Yeah.
Yes,
Ah.
and it's very good. It looks
Cool.
terrific, and
Does
it's
it light up?
$8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lights
cool.
up?
about that big.
Cool.
Does it? Does it light up?
No, it's just a hanging
Now,
decoration.
You
but
got to
yes.
say one thing about Hallmark is they'll come out with these licensed characters and designs
bet.
of things that you've been waiting to come out, like a miniature Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka,
Right, right.
a little
that's
Linda
cool.
Carter, Wonder Woman, things that
But they look good, too.
The
Yeah.
King Kong on top of the
Sure,
the
yes,
Empire
yeah.
State Building's terrific. Yeah.
yeah, we're going to do
Well-
more on our Hallmark show.
Hallmark.
Well-
We'll save it for a Hallmark episode.
Well, I have, Disney put out these things called the Gallery of Light, and there's an artist who does them, and I can't remember his name. Do you?
Yes, I know exactly. what you're saying.
Olenevsky or something like
Yes.
that.
And yes, that beautiful Nautilus bridge.
It's so great. And I have that, and I just love it because it lights up, and it's small. But
Yeah, it's about this big. I've
Yeah.
got one too, and and
The
my only
detail.
problem- the detail is amazing, and the only problem is running your finger around the edge of the frame to find the little button that's hidden. And I kind of
Especially when you're drunk.
it's jamming different parts of it that don't work. I'm like, why does this thing gotta light up? And there
But
it
it's
goes.
really lovely because you see the organ, and you see Nemo with his back to you.
Is it James Mason?
Or is it the guy you're doing? I'm just curious. But I love those things, and that's a great one. But speaking of Jules Verne kids things, my favorite version of Journey to the Center of the Earth,
the Filmation cartoon.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
That thing
was cool.
was great. And
right.
I have a couple of those on 16 millimeter, and they hit the ground running. Those things are nonstop entertainment from beginning to end, and they bring all the stuff that I wanted in those movies.
Right.
Mothman and all kinds of strange creatures.
My box of goodies, I debated whether or not to throw in my puzzle from Journey to the Center of the Earth. Yes, I have,
For
yes.
listeners, Courtney brought over this giant treasure trove of stuff for us to
Amazing.
look at, which we'll show pictures of. Matt, what was the date on the Journey to the Center of the Earth? The
like
filming.
1967.
Yep. Yeah.
Crazy cast too. Like
Yeah. Ted Knight who did the voices for a lot of cartoons. He was Pat Harrington, Schneider from Day at a Time.
He went on to do Schneider. See, that show launched careers. It made stars.
But they Filmation also, I think, at the same time, didn't they also do Fantastic Voyage?
Yes, that's also good too.
As a cartoon.
Yeah, I like that.
And what I love about that cartoon is that it takes a departure from the movie in a pretty drastic way, and so it becomes something all its own.
Yes.
This crazy adventure thing. And isn't there like
there's like a sabotage.
There's like an Indian psychic on board.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Now, Courtney, we had talked earlier, getting back to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the design of the submarine, just the whole look of it. When people say, oh, it's very Jules Verne, there's a whole group of people out there that are fanatical about the whole Nautilus look and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I'm surprised maybe there's a podcast out there just specialized.
Oh, there has to be.
Yeah.
Has to be.
But these people are fanatical about it.
Absolutely they are. And, well, the thing is that if you stepped away from absolutely every incarnation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and only stayed with Jules Verne's book, the description is vague. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the reference to it as the sword of the ocean is very much, I think, where everyone was kind of taking off. So it was really, if you will, what we would think of in a lot of ways as a modern day nuclear submarine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so despite the rivets and what was current at the time the novel was written, Verne was thinking of it in a different way. So the use of glass and all of those things that Harper Goff conceptualized really was his contribution, although there were certainly portals to observe the fish and all of that type of stuff.
And
but it was
Nemo, his ethnicity was different, wasn't it? Was it ever clear?
It never has been, and this has always been a bit of a sticking point for a lot of people, because one of the things that many don't realize is that when the novel was originally written, Captain Nemo was Russian. Mm. Oh. And his publisher asked him to change that.
Really?
Because they did not want to alienate any Russian marketplace for the novel.
Okay.
Mm.
So because
nothing's changed.
Yes, because of the conflicts in India and what have you. So they kind of, this idea of Prince Dakar, well, yes and no, honestly, because his physical description definitely belies the idea that he is a native Indian, because he is pale, and in many cases he's described as having blonde hair.
Okay.
So then people say, well, is he a half caste? Mm-hmm. Because, of course, obviously very wealthy and educated in England.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Returned, married, the children, and then wife and son killed in the Indian conflicts, which set him on his pathway to creating the Nautilus submarine to fight warships.
Right.
And, of course, as everyone knows, Nemo, the word, in fact, means no one.
Interesting.
I did not know that.
Yes, that's it. He is truly the man with no name.
No.
Yeah,
Like the ghost of the sea.
that's it.
My
Absolutely.
mind is just blown.
That's right. Yeah.
That's cool.
Now, in Alan Moore's interpretation in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen,
There he is Indian, right?
He's full Indian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually, when we were discussing the cover of my book, the subject came up, do you want to show Captain Nemo? And, of course, they wanted with the turban and a scimitar and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, I didn't want that, only because, to me, that violates Jules Verne's basic ethos that, I mean, not only from just a business standpoint, the character's origins was shifted around when he was writing the book, but also this is truly a man without a country, so he shouldn't be identified with any particular nationality.
Oh, yeah.
So you steer clear of that in your own novel.
Completely, yeah.
That's cool.
Right. Okay.
And I guess around the time when Jules Verne was putting out all these books, he did have a few run-ins, as we've already discussed, with his publisher, right? Who,
Oh, yeah.
Like, this guy always wanted changes made.
Yes. But too, the idea of popular fiction from other countries being distributed around the world, this had finally happened. You know, the Three Musketeers and the Man in the Iron Mask, and Sir Walter Scott, and of course shortly afterwards you're going to have Robert Louis Stevenson. And
Right.
So, but these men were international authors. Mm-hmm. So accommodating every single country and where the marketplace was going to be.
Tricky.
This was tricky, and it was a whole different world than it would have been where if it was just going to be distributed within your own province.
It was kind of like keeping it as escapist entertainment that can be
Absolutely.
digested by anyone.
And then I
Absolutely,
guess you have to make sure that nothing gets lost in translation. I forget that this was a French novel.
Right.
And it had to be translated into English or whatever other language that is. And sometimes things can get lost within the translation.
That had always been an issue pretty much with all of Verne's works, at least as the ones that we received. And I think finally the edition that came out on 20,000 Leagues, and it was a paperback. Ray Bradbury did the introduction to it and actually traces a bit of the problems of the translations of Jules Verne's work and how it altered some of its intention and some of the language and everything else, because no one is going to interpret everything exactly the same time after time, especially in a work of fiction. That's the thing. This was...
Right. It wasn't like fact-checking things.
Absolutely not.
There was no internet back then. Wikipedia.
No, it was, yes, someone sitting there with an inkwell and a quill going along. But the translation that came out, I believe it was about 61, 62, which was also followed in very close order by the first really wide release of Master of the World, which encompassed Master of the World and Rober the Conqueror. Yes. And
I like that movie.
because of the Vincent Price movie. And
another kind of pacifist character.
Absolutely,
bombing military installations with his airship. Like it was like a flying Nautilus.
That's right. Well, that was really the basis of Nemo Rising, as I just said, the Captain Nemo of the water versus the Captain Nemo of the air.
That's
that
awesome.
was it.
That's awesome.
That's the whole thing.
That's cool.
Is it in the timeline in between the other Verne books where before Nemo's
good question.
demise?
What I did is I bent the timeline a little bit.
That's okay.
And actually have Captain Nemo in prison and about to be hung for sinking the USS Abraham Lincoln. Yes. And President Grant has to intercede because we're having all sorts of problems, and the only way to find out what in the world is going on in the oceans is to let this man free and to release the Nautilus, which is in dry dock in Virginia. And it's been pulled apart by the military because they're trying to figure out its secrets, and they can't.
Did they send James West and Artemis Gordon after him?
They are the ghosts dancing in the distance. Yes.
Now, was Master of the World was AIP? I think,
Yes.
right? Was that a hit? I mean,
No, it wasn't.
'cause it was a little bit of a bigger budget.
It was
for
a
them,
bigger
right?
budget, and Richard Matheson actually had always said that William Whitney was one of the very few directors that he really never felt simpatico with. He thought that Jacques Tourneur was going to direct the movie.
Oh, really?
And when Whitney came on, and Bill Whitney was big stuff. I mean, he was a huge television director at that time, and the features had always been. He had directed other movies for AIP, but was primarily known for his serials and his work at Republic and things like that, and expert work at Republic. But even if you look at the movie, it feels overlit.
It's a little.
Yes,
yeah,
it
it's not-
does.
it-
Yeah.
It looks
And-
almost like a TV show in some ways.
It's very flat
It's
in a
flat.
lot of ways, and I know Daniel Holler wasn't too pleased about that because it's like, wait a minute, guys, if you light it this way, you're going to reveal that the albatross is painted wood,
Yeah.
which you can certainly see.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this
it's ambition's show. Like
It's
the budget didn't
ambition's
meet
show.
the ambitions.
But you
And-
could
but
have
I
shot
still-
that with everything they had, the way that it was. You could have shot it better, and it would have been more convincing.
yeah, I think so.
yeah.
The lack of mood.
Yes,
That's
is
what
a
it is.
problem.
Zero
And
mood.
especially with the cast and getting Charles
That's the
Bronson
thing.
and Henry Hull
and you have
everyone
Vincent
in there.
Price as
You bet.
Rover. And wasn't that kind of one of Charles Bronson's first lead roles in a heroic? I mean, he had done
absolutely
TV and
was. He had
stuff,
done-
but not.
Yeah, and
you
things
know.
like Machine Gun Kelly, and
Yeah.
of course all the supporting roles in the big movies, and of course this was the reuniting of Price and Bronson's from House.
I was just about to
Wax.
say,
Yeah, right.
the series of buddy pictures that
That's
they did, the Price Brunson.
Price Bronson
Yep.
this summer.
What do you think this is? Some kind of an encounter group? So
That is genius.
oh, thank you. But
Still a fun movie, though. I like that.
I love Master of the World, but its frayed edges definitely
that's
show.
something I'm
Yes.
surprised nobody has
Yeah,
tried to remake, because that could be an interesting remake, if done correctly and done with love, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were counting on it. That was a real pet project of Jim Nicholson's.
Yeah, it
and
seems like it was.
They
yeah.
were really counting on that one taking off, and sadly, it just didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, you brought up earlier Robert Louis Stevenson.
Yes.
And, he's not really known for being a science fiction writer necessarily, but, you've got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I would say that's an early science fiction.
Sure.
That's kind of a trailblazer in a lot of ways. There's the metaphors, the undertones in that tale. And then you've got the dabbling with science that you shouldn't.
Well, one of the things, of course, that would be, I think, a trope that always comes back, and every single one of these writers would use it in one way or another. Of course, Mary Shelley most famously.
Sure.
And Bram Stoker. Is how many of these novels were written as first-person narratives?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Dracula.
Yeah. Lovecraft, too.
Absolutely, H.P. Lovecraft and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde
Yeah.
and so using the diary format, and
Yeah.
that was something that they very often went back to, which I guess also meant that was someone going to pick it up, it felt relatable.
Yeah.
And 20,000 Leagues kind of jumps back and forth a little bit because you have Conseil has his little diary he's keeping with Professor Aronnax.
Oh,
and
right.
all that. Yes. So this was if you will, an approach to fantastic fiction that everybody kind of, was
familiar with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And probably made it more palatable to whoever. Because also, too, a lot of these novels also were serialized in newspapers. So that was going to...
It's almost like a literary version of found footage film.
That's a very good point.
In a way
absolutely,
back
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it more palatable because you're reading this
Yeah,
somebody's diary.
Yeah.
Like,
You're on the journey with them.
yeah, yeah,
You're in their head.
yeah.
Now, Stevenson also, too, because he was, I think, well, like Verne, when you think of Around the World in 80 Days and some of the other novels, that these guys were primarily beyond what we think of as science fiction and even horror, but they were adventure writers.
Right.
And certainly Stevenson was. And
Yeah.
in fact, probably truly the master, ultimately, because of the creation of Treasure Island. But then they branched out. And like with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, of course, everyone thinks of Sherlock Holmes. Very few people seem to recall that he wrote The Lost World.
That's true.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're talking, the silent version, not the.
No, we're talking
not
the book.
The novel.
I
The
know,
novel that he wrote.
not the movie that came out recently. Just want to,
Oh, no, not Jurassic Park.
No,
No.
Yeah, he wrote Jurassic Park.
No,
And he didn't write Frosty the Poodle, even though his name is on there someplace.
This
Yes.
is one of the drafts, one of the
Yes.
early drafts. Frosty, no one will buy it.
Yes.
Yeah, I forgot all about that. But that's a great story. And when I think about those writers, Verne, and we were just talking about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, do you think that there was a lot of leeway when it came to speculative fiction where you could take a serious subject or maybe even a taboo subject? With Verne, it was war. With Stevenson, it was, the darker nature of man, and put some salacious things in there. Verne wasn't really salacious in any way, too much.
No.
But do you think that writers then were seeing the potential of here's a way that I can get my stuff through in a maybe like a Swiftian way? I can get some of my
populist kind of way.
I think so. And certainly all of them seem to have at least some form of contempt for government. That was very much,
Right.
and certainly that was true with Wells. And
Wells,
so-
yeah, big time. Yeah.
And so that always seemed to be kind of, if you will, the editorial undertone of everything that they were writing, or a great deal of what they were writing. But also, here is the biggest thing. The reason they were able to do it is because this was the popular fiction of its day. If it wasn't selling, then they would not have been allowed that freedom.
True.
Right.
And let's face it, the whole story, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it's such a great story. And there were so many films made based on this story I was trying to think which one my favorite. I just saw. Well, I'd seen it before, but the Spencer Tracy version. I know we
I know you like that one.
No, it's not. No, it's not that I like it. It's just
Okay.
I just saw it, and it's like Spencer Tracy. He's a great actor, but it always seems like I want more Hyde. I want.
It's a little bit too much of him.
Yes.
Just
Well, that's
frowning.
Always,
and,
that's always that's always the issue with any Jekyll and Hyde adaptation. To me, is that you have to buy that like nobody recognizes him as Dr. Jekyll.
Well, really,
Frederick March did a
You buy
Frederick
it.
March.
Yeah,
well, that's
really
like
beautiful.
the gold standard.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Frederick
but
March.
the Spencer Tracy one, not for a second.
But I loved what Wolf Mankiewicz did with Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
I was just about to
yeah.
bring that up. That is, I just watched
Hammer
that
film.
recently,
Yes.
and I forgot how great it is.
Yeah, it's different. It's kind of a different approach to it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And how scary that Hyde is.
Anytime you've got Oliver Reed as a punk,
Yeah, and like really, he got his ass kicked.
yes,
I don't think so.
Yeah, Christopher Lee is a bounder.
And of course, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. Of course.
Which I have a soft spot in my heart.
Who doesn't want to turn into Martine Bestwick? You bet. Come on.
Oh, I can't even. Whoa.
We've
Talk about
talked
mind blown.
Yeah,
Yes.
we've talked
Right.
about that.
Written by
But,
Brian Clemens.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, for talking Wells too, another story that Island of Lost Souls, which also has been adapted in a lot of different ways, and also just inspired other films. I mean,
Yes.
of course, we have the classic 32 film. I still enjoy the 70s one with Michael York. I like the makeup in that one. It's a good
seen
driving
that
film.
movie so many times.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
But when I saw that film so many times, I had not yet seen The Island of Lost Souls
Oh, right.
because it was this cult,
Right. Hard
to find film.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so we're talking about two different things. It's the same thing. It's the Island of Lost Souls, also known as
Well, that's the 32 version.
okay.
The 77 version is called The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Moreau.
based on the story, The Island of Dr.
Right.
Moreau.
Directed by Don Taylor.
Yeah.
Right. But of course, then we have the 90s version, which I do enjoy.
I enjoy. Now,
the
would I?
Brando.
It's not the one that I would say.
Val Kilmer.
If you really want to get the, heart and soul of the original story, watch this one. No,
No, right.
But if you go in there just looking for gonzo entertainment,
Right.
I think that movie delivers.
Yeah.
But that's the problem is though. I mean, you have to kind of be alibi Ike to go in there and go, well, if you think about this and, have 15 beers before you see it. And then, if you poke one of your eyes out, then, you're really going to enjoy this thing.
yeah.
Sorry.
I'm not drinking 15 beers or poking my eye out.
I would argue that
It's kind of a fascinating train wreck to me.
I enjoy. There's so many scenes with Brando that are genuinely entertaining.
Right. They can
And
be bonkers.
it's weird. Now, again, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
But watched with a companion piece of the documentary, the Richard Stanley.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Then it really comes to
Yeah.
life.
Yes.
There's also a couple of Filipino inspirations. One of the
Oh, the John Ashley,
but
Blood
also
Island, and
one of the
the Bat People.
the Bat People, Twilight People.
Yep.
But I think one of the first Filipino horror films was called Terror is a Man.
Oh, with
That was-
Francis Lee Darragh.
Yeah,
Yes,
59. That's very much it's the Moreau story. Yeah.
it is the Moreau story.
But it's pretty good. It's like
But-
kind of moody, black and white.
For pure, just the bubbling sadism and sexuality Charles Lawton
Oh,
brings.
absolutely.
I mean, it's
Absolutely.
astonishing
It's
what they got away
My
with.
favorite version
yes,
of all
yeah,
time.
it's an amazing film.
Yeah. And that movie has a modern feel in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to Lawton's performance in that thing.
Yeah.
Considering how this bigger than life actor, the subtlety that he brought to a lot of those scenes is
Right.
amazing.
I had never seen Murders in the Zoo, and just very recently did. And Kathleen Burke plays the wife of Lionel Atwill, who is as lascivious as you're going to. That's everyone loves in the trailer because it's the shot of the guy with his lips sewn together because he tried to kiss her.
Oh yeah. Right.
And Lionel took exception to that.
Right.
And she is wonderful in this film. And when you see her, the mute Panther girl in Island of Lost Souls, and then see her just in a straight role, it's really rather remarkable. Although she is definitely slinking around, and a lot of guys, including Randolph Scott, want to.
And the makeup. The makeup in that film.
Yeah. It's
Oh my God!
I think
the
is
half
yeah,
tiger man, and then
really innovative for its day.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Now,
And a lot of that stuff was in the background
Must
too.
have freaked
Yep.
people out in theaters back then. I
Well,
mean,
they banned it.
Yeah.
Oh my God! That one series of shots where they walk into close up right after the
Yeah.
other. Oh yeah.
Scary, so scary.
And actually, I mean, I think the makeup is fine, but to me, the disappointing makeup is Bela Lugosi.
Correct. I completely
It looks
agree.
like the ape man.
Yeah.
It's
And-
just like
and
it's just fur in his face.
And do you think it was? I mean, I don't know anything about this, but I would assume that it was because Lugosi didn't want a lot of makeup on him.
Well, even the test makeups though that they show were all very similar to that, and it was whichever early issue of Famous Monsters they did the portrait of Bela Lugosi, but that is a test makeup from Island of Lost Souls.
Maybe they
It's not the
figured he
actual-
was the leader of the
Or he's the most
Manimals,
human.
So yeah, they
Yeah.
wanted him to be maybe.
But if you don't know it's him, I mean, you know it's him because of his voice.
yeah,
Well,
right.
yeah.
But you can't. But you're right though. You can't really tell otherwise. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Hungarian animals on the island.
now,
Exactly.
Murders
But it is the closest to Wells.
and Murders in the Zoo and Island of Lost Souls share the same screenwriter,
Yes, they do.
and you probably know who I'm talking about, who is, I think, for my money, one of the more interesting and unsung science fiction pioneers of the 20th century, and that's Philip Wiley.
Yes.
His first screenwriting effort was Island of Lost Souls. The last thing he wrote was for television, and it was Steven Spielberg's very first foray into sci-fi. The name of the game.
Yeah.
And in between, he had done all these different novels and nonfiction. Again, Philip Wiley is his
When
name.
Worlds Collide, he wrote
When
the
Worlds
novel.
Collide,
Novel
yes,
When
the
Worlds
big one,
Collide,
yes.
which has been cited as being an inspiration for Flash Gordon, for Alex Raymond. Because that novel came out in the 30s.
Yes.
And it was, of course, subsequently adapted. He also wrote a novel in 1930 called Gladiator, which bore a lot of similarities to the early versions of Superman.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
what you have is a scientist who tries out a formula on his wife, and she gives birth to a super baby. And this baby, he's immune to bullets. He's lightning fast, and he can jump as high as a building.
And it's pre-Superman.
It's 3 years pre-Superman.
Wow.
Is that right?
Interesting.
And as the kid grows into an adult, the parents have to keep his powers hidden because they think that he'll be ostracized at best by society. So he has to hide his
A little bit of a
superpowers.
trailblazer, I'd say.
Yeah.
Wiley also wrote one of my favorite science fiction stories called The Answer from 1955 at the height of the Cold War. Are you familiar with this, Courtney?
No, I'm not.
It's a novella. It's about 60 pages long. And it reads, for all the world, it's played very straight. It's like Failsafe. It's like 7 Days in May. You've got Russians and Americans doing H-bomb tests. And the result of the H-bomb test is that they kill an angel. So
Wow, that sounds great.
It's very, again, it's 55 and it's very Twilight Zone, but it's very played straight. And the angel has a message in a book, which is a lot like To Serve Man.
Don't blow up angels.
Well, spoiler, the message is love one another. And again, after this very, very straight sort of military story where you've got the president, you've got
interesting.
generals,
Make a good Twilight Zone
Yeah.
episode.
it was actually adapted for television in 1955.
Like Tales of Tomorrow or
It
something?
was like Playwrights 56.
Oh,
when it was
yeah,
supposed to
yeah,
be. And Albert Decker was in it, and
Really?
one of Steve McQueen's first roles.
Wow. Did
So
he play
again-
the angel?
I don't think so.
Wow.
So again, Philip
Interesting,
Wiley, very interesting author, not a household name, but
Yeah.
I'll
certainly.
check this out. This
Yeah.
sounds great.
That sounds cool.
And he also wrote a nonfiction piece in the 50s called Generation of Vipers, which is an attack on American society from every angle and what's wrong with it. I mean, he was a really pissed off guy.
Wow.
But he was a sociologist and a psychologist. And at some point, he had a fascinating career. He was at one point like head of the Fish and Game Commission. It's like, totally.
Was he? He's probably angry at them too, right? Is that in the story?
Every picture you ever see of this guy, he's pissed off. But yeah, Philip Wiley, I would recommend finding out about him.
I will. I'll check this
Fascinating.
out. Thanks,
Yeah,
James.
very
That's
cool.
great.
There you go.
That's interesting. Well, if we're talking about, Wells, of course, War of the Worlds, Time Machine, Invisible Man, these are all like...
Time Machine was his first one, yes?
Yes.
And H.G. Wells, look, he was born much later, though. He was born in 1866. And so he came in after...
Very much after
after Jules Verne.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. I mean, Verne laying the groundwork for all of this, just because the possibility of exploring the way that he did and going into fantastic areas, which no one really had. Now, the Gothics, of course, that was already existing. Dracula and Frankenstein.
Right.
And, of course, Edgar Allan Poe was so popular. But the way Verne was doing it and the tone and, if you will, the sense of appreciation for all of these possibilities. Like, wouldn't this be fantastic if this existed?
Right.
And, of course, what he was predicting pretty much all came true.
Right.
Yeah, really.
Whereas Wells is a little more.
Well, he went really for the high adventure and
Right.
alien invasions,
And it's a little more, but his futures were a little more downbeat.
oh yes, very
Right.
much so.
Yeah, I mean, right out of the gate with the Time Machine, which is probably one of my favorite novels of all time. I've read
Yeah.
that so many times, and the movie, the George Powell film, is very different from the book, but the
it's-
broad strokes are there.
glorious.
Yeah.
It's glorious. It's
And
wonderful.
the tone and the sincerity is there.
Yeah.
But you see, again, the Time Machine, because of what Sean said, the tone, the sincerity, this is bouncing off of 20,000 Leagues.
Right.
That tone became the tone that people wanted to set when they did fantasy adventure like this.
And that's a first person, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
Once again, it grabs you from the very beginning. You're
Right.
taking this journey with him. And what I love about the book, as opposed to the movie, is that the book brings you really to the very end of the world. Like the end of, the sun is burning out and man is gone from the earth. And all there is just ocean and these weird little squiggly, like crab creatures that are crawling around. And so he goes to the end.
Right, right.
And I've never seen that done in any adaptation. And I'd love to see the full journey.
Did you ever see the very bizarre, it's not really good, but it's interesting, is the TV movie from
Yes,
the 70s
yeah.
made by Sun Classic Pictures?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Of the Time
So
Machine?
John Beck and Priscilla Barnes, Whit Bissell's in it. It's like
Of course he is.
I haven't seen this, Sean.
It was a weird.
The Morlocks have glowing eyes, don't they?
In the late 70s, they were making, I think, literary adaptations. For,
Yes. Well, they
as
did
TV movie
Fall of the House
special.
of Usher with Martin Landau.
Oh my God, yeah. But like this was 78, and it was John Beck is the lead. And it's the Time Machine, but done like in a TV movie budget in the 70s. Yeah, the Morlocks are very different.
Yeah, the Morlocks
They're like-
have like headlight glowing eyes.
Yeah, it's really
Yes.
bizarre. I mean, it's kind of interesting to see just once, but and of course the 2002 movie,
Which I couldn't.
I couldn't
give a
even
shit
get
about.
through. It was
No,
terrible.
I
I
did
will-
not enjoy it.
I will say this though. I mean, the Time Machine. First of all, I love in the 1960 George Powell the design of the Time Machine is
Everything,
really
everything
cool.
about that is
We're
great.
talking
I mean,
about like a Jules Verne kind
Yes,
of looking
very
thing.
Jules
Yeah, it
Verne.
looks, yeah.
And the 2002 version, the Time Machine, to me, when you look at, I mean, it looks like a time machine. I mean, it's
because I've
just
seen my Time Machines.
Well,
That
it's
looks exactly.
it has the
No
spinning.
DeLorean.
It has the spinning stuff. It's don't get me started there. But it's
Okay,
it's
wait a minute. I need
the
to. I
only
need to start
thing-
an argument. I'm sorry.
The only
Courtney.
thing I like really about that movie is the actual look of the Time Machine.
Which one?
The 2002
The Guy
version.
Pearce one?
Yeah, the Guy Pearce.
Yeah, it's kind of
I
cool
don't
looking.
like the thing about the Morlocks is I expect the Morlocks to be like chubby and blue and the brightness, but then the Morlocks in the 2002.
It has no
Terrible
heart. It has no
CGI.
heart to it.
It's terrible.
And directed by H.G. Wells' grandson.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, too
geez.
bad.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think it might be the only thing, by the way. I think that was like the selling.
I'm guessing not.
It might have been the selling point.
he
it's
was
like,
he was an
hey.
animation director at Disney,
Yeah.
wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also something else too. These stories, what Powell did with War of the Worlds is astounding. Mm-hmm. But what he did there was something that was usually not done whenever anybody did an adaptation of any of these.
Updating.
Updating it,
Right.
making it contemporary.
Right.
Almost every one of
Those
these
warships
movies
are
we're
completely
talking about
different.
is period piece.
Right. That's true. That's
that's right.
He contemporized
Yeah.
it and changed the design. Do you hear that like recently? I don't know if it just came out in Blu-ray or is coming out, but they're releasing a high-def version of War of the Worlds and they're taking out the wires.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
God be praised.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay.
I've been waiting for that my
I know.
entire life. That's the
Yeah.
only thing that kind of messes up that
'cause
movie
you
for
see
me.
the wires suspending the warships,
And I
all
know-
the
I
shots.
understand that
And it looks
back in the
great, but, like,
day, it
you can
was,
see the wire. It's
So look,
It's
we're
still beautiful.
We're
Yeah.
talking about the 1953 version. This is with Anne Robinson
And Gene Barry.
Gene Barry. And it's funny when you bring up it was contemporary people, you need to remember that, you look at it now, it's a dated film. Well, at that time, that was state of the art, 53. This is, the cars are from 53. Everything was 53.
It's a gorgeous movie.
It's
incredible.
You know why he was that a decision early on? Because they could have done stop motion war machines from the design.
The tripod.
Because Harryhausen did that test footage of the little Martian coming out of the ship, and that was the look from the novel.
It's interesting because I think that would have been cool, but those floating ships with just that
the manta ray.
There's a
nothing like
terror about them.
Yeah,
that design with the copper finish and all, it's just absolutely astounding. And also, we're going back to what is the underlying message from Wells? Well, the underlying message is we are screwed. We pull ourselves together. And that's it. It's the same message as Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because that was the political climate at the time the movies were made. And so it absolutely reflects it, just like Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah.
And from that standpoint, it means that it also has the same impact that the novels had when they were written, because they were, sounding the same alarm, if you will, when the books were published.
And it's also the problem that a lot of cultures on this planet had when you'd go to a new place and, all of a sudden there's a virus that you have not come in contact with before.
Right.
And there goes the colony.
Right.
Yep, absolutely.
What about the War of the Worlds Spielberg version? What are your thoughts on that?
My understanding is, Spielberg, they tried to have the design of the ships be similar to the how they were described in the classic.
I didn't hate the design.
I don't know.
It's the rest of it.
I think the idea, I guess maybe it seemed like a cool idea at the time, is okay, how are you going to do a giant worldwide alien invasion and do it differently, and maybe in slightly smaller budget, and that is to do it from the point of view of one family. That was the idea. And the idea is not bad, but I don't know, it did nothing for me.
Yeah, there also seemed to be a lot of inconsistency with what cars work and what cars didn't work.
Yeah. But also, I didn't understand the whole. Remember, when the machines first were aroused and woke up, they were coming from underground. So we're supposed to believe thousands of years ago they were put there, and nobody's come across them by putting in a pipeline or something.
Right.
I didn't buy that for a second, that they were already on the Earth all that time.
And it is kind of cool to see that giant fuselage and all shredded on the universal backlot, but it's been there too long.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's like the backdraft exhibit.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get rid of time to put in, Rondo Hatton land or something.
I would love Rondo Hatton land.
Stop screaming.
Did you ever go do that backdraft thing?
No.
Yes, I did.
Did you see that?
I did.
That was
Fucking
fun.
thing.
Fire. I've never seen that before.
No, but it's
But the worst part about it is the little beginning where, hi, I'm Ron Howard. I'm a big director, and I made this great movie. You're an experience.
Have you ever seen the Fast and Furious thing?
No.
Yes, I experienced that too.
What is that?
If you want to see a bunch of actors who hate each other's guts standing there wishing they weren't doing this.
Oh my God! Now I want to see
It is awesome.
Like
Is
a
this
Star
at
Wars
the end of
holiday
the tram
special.
ride?
Yeah.
Is that the whole?
Yeah.
Man.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
But I don't want to poke fun at people who like the Fast and the Furious.
No.
It's a
Don't
very
offend them.
popular. It's a very popular.
Yes.
Do you like it?
I'm not.
Do you like it?
No, I'm not the craziest. I'm
Okay,
not
so it's all right. You're allowed to have your opinions.
Yeah.
For people that like it, that's great. But
Yeah.
you don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
It's a matter of taste.
Courtney, you like it?
But I
I appreciate those fans who appreciate Fast and the Furious.
You are
Look,
good.
I just
You
wanted
are so good.
I just wanted to say that the whole backdraft thing, you're like, oh, fire. Yeah, there's a lot of fire on that set, when you're in there and you see, fire.
Oh, wow.
Air and water.
we may never talk about Fast and Furious again. So let me say this, okay? I went and saw that first movie. I had just finished seeing another movie, so it was I just went into the other theater in the multiplex, and I sat there. The first Fast and Furious movie is about kids drag racing, in the valley.
That's right.
Right.
You go to Fast and Furious 7 or 8,
9.
and they're
How'd Vin Diesel get there?
they're crashing out of skyscrapers. They're going to the moon. It's like, what happened? It's like Mission Impossible now.
It's like what happened with Die Hard. when suddenly
Yeah, same thing.
everything, defies gravity and
It's like jets flying through the cities.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, what the hell? This is a guy running around with glass in his bare feet. Now,
Yeah.
what happened
Yeah,
to him?
right, right.
Yeah.
By eliminating physics, you're not upping the drama.
Exactly. Well, this is great. But getting back to H.G. Wells.
H.G. Wells.
You see, actually, it does, because you go back to,
Nice.
to the origins of these guys, and one of the things, certainly with Jules Verne, is they kept to the science of the day.
True. That's true.
Yeah, because that's the only reference point they had.
Right, right.
But time travel, that must have just blown people's minds. Just the idea of not only just the concept of it, but he's taken that and he's created this whole future world that's horrible.
Well, but of course, too, this was at a time when everyone was certainly trying to figure, okay, how does the universe work? Do we rotate around the sun? Is the sun rotating around us? How does every, time the Earth turns, how does that actually affect our lives? What is really the increments of time? All that stuff. So everybody was this was on everyone's mind. So it was such a natural place for Wells to go.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and one of the reasons why it's such a great story. I mean, who among us hasn't thought about having our own time machine and going back in time? Or would you want to go to the future or back in time? We've talked about this. Because I wanted to go back to...
I'd start with the past.
See, yeah.
Well, yeah, if you have a choice.
I want to go to 1955 and pick up a few robots. That's what I think.
Well, I
a
know.
few
I'd
toys.
go back to 11th grade to a date I had that I really screwed up.
Yeah.
But you see, if you went back, you'd be your age right now. What are you going to do? You're going to see yourself at, you're young. You're going to be an old
that creepy dude?
guy.
That's true. That's
yeah,
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you have a restraining order, sir?
Yes. Okay.
No,
Well,
if
you just shattered that fantasy. So
Courtney,
thank you very much.
if you get in the time machine right now, you're going back into time as you are right now.
Then where you
That's
go?
true,
Then where do you
yeah.
go?
So all you can do is watch yourself make that mistake, unless you want to throw a rock at that kid and go, "Hey, don't make that mistake."
Yeah, have a word with that kid.
There you go. Yes.
Right.
But,
right.
but then
You can't touch because it's like.
But then let's say,
it's like
okay,
matter
so let's
and
say you go
antimatter.
and you tell that kid, "Hey, kid, don't do that mistake." Then the little boy goes, "All right, sir, thanks very much." Then you go back in time, you get back in regular time. Who knows? Now that you didn't make the mistake, now you're
Hitler's
married.
ruling the
No,
world.
well, yeah, it's the butterfly
Gone.
effect.
Yeah, it is. It's
You
like
know?
it's like not shooting Hitler. It
Right,
just,
right.
everything.
That's why I would,
Yes.
I'd go back in time. I wouldn't talk to anyone. I wouldn't, I'm not going to
you'd buy a robot.
Yes, I'd buy a
that
robot.
Hitler wanted.
Yeah.
Here in the United States, yes, Hitler's
Yeah.
going to
Hitler sent his spies.
No, first of all, I'd go back to 1955. Hitler
I want
wasn't around.
Sarabi is a robot,
No,
even though it hasn't been invented yet.
See, that's what's so stupid. It's like if I went back to 1955, the robots would, they'd be there. There'd
Hey,
be no.
you know what? This is what I want to do. I think I've said it before. I want to go back and I want to see Martin and Lewis.
There you go.
I want to go to the Copa. I want to get a nice dinner.
See, and
little wine.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, you sit in the back.
$2.99?
You sit in the back. Yeah.
Maybe hire a floozy. And,
But then you'd get into a fight with Frank Sinatra or something, and it would blow the whole thing.
No.
that would be I would be so honored.
You would
No,
not,
that's well.
You would not be stupid.
Thank you,
enough.
Mr.
Frank,
Sinatra.
hit me. Yes.
No, you wouldn't be stupid enough to make that mistake. What? You're going to get in a fight
No,
with
I'd
Frank
get a
Sinatra.
booth in the back.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Okay.
The key,
Okay. Low
the
profile.
key to
Yeah.
time travel is you don't want to, mess any waves. You
No,
want to try
I
to.
just, I
you
just want to
go
watch. I just want to watch their show.
watch,
I'd go back to 1976 so I can hang out with Marjoe Gortner on the set of Food of the Gods.
Wow.
Where'd you get these giant chickens?
Aim high, my friend.
James, what would you do?
Wow,
Oh, this is the first time you've thought about
You
it?
haven't thought about going back in
Time travel.
I was I had Courtney's idea, go back and try to fix a romance, but it's true now. I'd be like 56 years old.
You'd be
What
the
am I gonna
creepy
do?
guy.
I know.
No, you know what I'd do? I'd hit on everyone's hot mom.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I had a friend who had definitely had a
Teachers.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I'd-
That's not gonna.
I'd bang every teacher.
There you go.
That's not gonna mess up the future, Matt.
Who cares?
Matt, that might.
So, hey, Hitler's in charge now. I'm sorry.
Why do you keep
always
bringing up
Hitler.
Hitler?
It always comes
Why
back
do you? Hitler's gone. Hello.
Hitler Jr. now is
Yeah.
little Adolf.
Well, I brought up Food of the Gods because I wanted to talk about Food of the Gods and Empire of the Ants,
Okay.
which did have giant creatures in them. You know?
Yes, it did.
And now I have not read those original stories, but
Who were
the
done
movies
by-
were fun.
I have a British quad for a fantastic double feature of Straw Dogs and Food of the Gods.
What the hell?
I am not kidding. They were released together.
That's
in England.
hilarious.
And it says Peck and Paw violence and H.G. Wells horror
Oh, wow. That's
on
fantastic.
one bill.
That
Yes.
is fantastic.
Yeah.
What was the third film? Like Herbie Goes Bananas.
Does absolutely wonderful. Yes.
Wow. That's
That
great.
is
Oh, I would have been there
amazing.
the first day.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Those are-
I don't know which one to see first.
Yeah, but it did seem like in the 70s, there's a little bit of a resurgence of Wells films. I mean, those two, Food of the Gods, the year right after Empire of the Ants, a movie that is only so unbelievably loosely based on anything.
Okay.
remotely-
If you
a lot
say
of
what I
this
think you're gonna say.
Well,
yes.
it's also driven by, because these were all American International, and that was
Right.
also Island of Dr. Moreau.
That's true. There's also a crazy, loopy Canadian sci-fi film made in 1979, cashing in, of course, on the popularity of Star Wars, called The Shape of Things to Come.
Jack Palance, baby, and
Palance.
those trash cans.
Supposedly,
That movie
isn't
is
it like
nuts.
a loosely
Super loose.
based on
Yeah.
things to
It's
come?
like R2-D2 type robots in it. You got Carol Lindley, Barry Morse, Nicholas Campbell. I mean, it's a good cast and like
it's
ridiculous.
beyond
movie.
awful.
It's so bad, but it's entertaining though. I will give it that. But it's like H.G. Wells' Shape of Things to Come. They really pushed the H.G. Wells thing.
Yeah, when
I
when
actually-
Wells is the sexiest name on your bill.
right.
Yes, I actually saw that movie on a double bill at the
Straw Dogs?
Wiltern Theater. Close, straight time.
Oh, very close.
What a company!
What is
We should do
that?
an episode like on weird double features. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is
That's-
crazy.
that's bizarre.
But that one's really terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty
Whereas
bad.
Things to Come is
Yes.
really
1936.
actually holds up surprisingly well.
Yeah,
I think.
I enjoyed that movie. Yeah.
Yes. Well,
And-
the Corda film with
Yeah,
Raymond
Yeah,
Massey.
yeah.
really good production design, really cool.
and Wells' screenplay.
Yes.
Yes, that's
Well,
right.
that's the thing. He got very much involved with movies. He was fascinated with movies and lived into that era, just like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle did. You know,
Yeah.
And so they actually got to see their work transcribed
yeah.
to film. Which,
Yeah, that's kind of
Yep.
cool. Right.
And another movie that had Wells as a character, which is a favorite, Time After Time.
I love that movie.
Malcolm McDowell.
From 1979, directed by Nicholas Meyer,
That's a great one.
Was that
Mary
the first?
Steenburgen,
Yep.
Yeah.
and
Was that the
David
first
Warner
time?
as Jack the
Warner.
Ripper?
Was that
Yeah.
the first time anyone where it was H.G. Wells who was the time traveler, or
yes,
the actual
so.
character in
yeah,
the film?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, when I started noodling around with this idea of my Captain Nemo book, actually, everyone says, well, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen didn't exist yet and all those things. So actually my, if you will, literary inspiration was a 7% Solution, because Nick Meyer was really the guy, at least in my mind, who took these literary characters and brought them also into contact with real people, in this case, Sigmund Freud.
Right.
And then, of course, he did
yeah.
the West End horror, where it's Gilbert and Sullivan and Jack the Ripper, and
Yeah, yeah.
Are there other fictional or realistic actual persons in the novel?
Well, of course, it's President Grant and his cabinet, and then some of the other characters. Like I have one young man who's one of the first Secret Service agents, is the nephew of the secretary of the Baltimore Gun Club, which is the group that sends the rocket to the moon and from the Earth to the moon. So there's a lot of kind of little goodies like that. Yes, but the what I did with President Grant. Hardly historically accurate. However, I turned him into Sergeant Fury, and everybody seems to really be digging that.
Nice.
Yes.
That's great.
President Grant and his Howling Commandos.
You mentioned From the Earth to the Moon. That was a disappointing movie, I thought. The 1958 film.
Oh, with Joseph Cotton
Joseph
and
Cotton,
everybody.
George
Sanders.
Yeah.
Talk about a snooze fest.
Yeah, it was done very low budget,
Yeah.
and you can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
According to my understanding, I think I talked to Sean about this too on one of our episodes, that when the film was being made, that was the time when MGM had run out of money.
Right.
They did not have money for the rest of the picture, basically, and they basically scrambled to try to put whatever it was that they had together to finish the film. Yeah, it is disappointing, because the timing was all bad.
Yeah.
Also, it's I don't know. and this may be how shallow I am, but as a kid watching a movie about going to the moon or another planet, I can't have the movie be primarily about the journey to the planet because I've seen that before. And I want to get to the planet. I want there to be creatures,
monsters,
and also it was so close to the space program too. It's like, look, I want
it was
real,
very antiquated.
Yeah,
by then,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this has always been something, as some people have always had problems with movies like Conquest of Space and
Destination Moon, even
Destination Moon,
Yeah.
absolutely, because they said, well, wait a minute, this is just about astronauts or rocket nauts or whatever you want to call them, and whoever, Lloyd Bridges or Cameron Mitchell or whoever it might be.
Right.
And where's the giant tentacled thing dropping on everybody's head? And
But even all those movies are still more exciting than From the Earth to the Moon.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
if you're going to do a movie like that, the human drama in the ship has to be top notch.
Right.
And I will say,
why bother?
Destination Moon, I think, is great, and
Yeah,
it's
I do
like
love that.
1950.
I
They
still
tried
enjoy
to
that. I
do
still enjoy that.
with the science that they had at the time, and I'm fine. They do get to the moon, and they pal around on the
but
moon, and then they
And
get
the
back.
characters are
Yeah.
fun.
And also, what's interesting too, my friend Justin Humphreys, who's like the George Powell authority, of course, there was a conflict because of Rocket Ship XM.
Yes,
That's right. Yeah.
And that it got very nasty. That
Really?
Robert Lippert was beating George Powell to the punch.
But that's
with
right.
So
the
for listeners, we
movie.
kind of talked about this. Destination Moon was a big budget thing,
movie, yep.
and they're
High
taking their time,
profile.
high profile, and so
Life magazine
the
and-
Rocket Ship XM guys go, we're gonna race this film. They're gonna try to get this film out before Destination Moon and kind of and be the first spaceship film.
Oh, you
or
bet.
that was the controversy.
But that's always been the. Do you remember?
Outbreak?
No.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about Carnosaur and Jurassic Park. Remember that?
yes.
Oh, that was so great.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Steven appropriated anything from Carnosaur. But, oh my God, that was just the most glorious thing for Roger to. Yep.
Yeah, and in the end, Carnosaur is still more enjoyable than many of the Jurassic Park sequels.
I would go with that. Yeah. Especially the one that ripped off Atari. That one kind of annoyed me.
One thing I didn't realize that there was the movie in the '60s called "Those Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines."
It was Stuart
and there
Whitman.
there was a sequel called
Those Magnificent Flying Fools.
Those Fantastic Flying Fools. I didn't
Yep.
realize that was based on Rocket to the Moon.
Absolutely,
Jules
yes.
Verne's, yeah. Well, I mean, it was a comedy, and it was like kind of a sequel to that other one.
Well,
but-
there, of course, the producer was Harry Alan Towers.
Oh, yeah.
Who was scooping up literary properties,
Fu Manchu
especially
film.
Fu Manchu, absolutely,
Yeah.
and things that had fallen quickly into the public domain.
Right.
And he would grab them because he thought of the public recognition and bang a movie
Right.
out as quickly as possible. Usually with Gert Frobe somewhere in there.
right.
Now, if we're going down the moon road, First Men in the Moon,
Yeah.
that Ray Harryhausen classic, and I think that film is so entertaining.
That's a really
It does
fun film.
take a little too much time for me to get to the moon, but when you get there, it is fantastic.
And talk about again that fanciful element. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
No,
yes,
it
it's-
really does. The lightness of tone, because of Lionel Jeffries.
Yeah.
he's so great.
and
yeah.
and the design of everything.
Yes,
the
yes.
The crystals and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
the moon caterpillar thing.
yeah,
so
and the
awesome.
and the moon men.
The moon calf.
moon
yeah,
calf,
the moon
yes.
calf. That's right. Yeah,
I love that.
Well, and just the moon orb, the ship.
Yeah.
It's
that
so
rolling
good.
along?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
kind of
good.
love that. I
Was that
love
was that a hit when it came out? I'm feeling. I thought I heard
I
it
don't
was
Minor?
not.
I don't think
Did
that
okay?
it was. I
Yeah.
think it did okay.
Yeah.
We did the commentary on Three Worlds of Gulliver,
Oh, nice.
and we were talking, and it was Randy Cook and Stephen Smith and myself, and they really had it broken down as to which Harryhausen films really did well, and they were kind of at the end of their Columbia tether. They were kind of diminishing a little bit,
Right.
and then of course came back roaring. Huge, but they left Columbia and went to Warner Brothers for Valley of Guanchi. And
But now Guanji, I heard it was not a hit though.
no, it was
Right.
not.
I like that movie a lot though.
Yeah.
It's a strong Harryhausen film.
Oh, I love Valley of Guanchi,
Yeah.
but it was kind of, I think that at the time of even First Men in the Moon, that phase of interest probably in Wells and Verne and what have you that had started almost 15 years before was kind of
Fading a
finally,
little bit.
It was
Right.
phasing out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that one of the stories in Dead of Night was based on H.G. Wells' story, the golfer's story, the two golfers with the
really?
the
Oh, I didn't know that.
The ghost of his golfer buddy comes back to keeps haunting him. That was based on H.G. Wells' story.
I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
Yeah.
Now, H.G. Wells also did, maybe it's kind of considered a horror film, but I also think of it as sci-fi, and that's The Invisible Man.
Absolutely sci-fi.
And,
Totally.
We talked about, there's Jekyll and Hyde. If you could take a formula and then turn it into something else. Well, what if you could turn invisible? And who among us hasn't thought about, I'm going to turn invisible and go into a bank, and that kind of thing.
Is that James Mason being invisible?
No, that was Claude Rains in a very fine effort.
No, Claude Rains is kind of like this. And the thing
that's
about
getting there. That's better.
Now, people forget Claude Rains. Look, it's called the frickin' Invisible Man, and he's invisible.
Why
so
are you
can't
mad
really
already?
See. No. But see, what's so great is he had this amazing voice. Claude Rains just has this fantastic voice that I'm sure Courtney can do because I can't.
No. But I will ask you, who gets his bicycle stolen by the Invisible Man?
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember.
I remember the scene, but I don't know.
Walter Brennan.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a Universal horror franchise that I always liked because I thought the originals is great, but I like the different things they did with that franchise.
I love the Invisible Agent.
I was just about to bring. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Invisible Man fighting Nazis. That's fantastic.
I wish they would have done more of those.
Yeah. And even
Well, they were a little more expensive because of the optical work and stuff.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it had to.
But I like Vincent Price as the Invisible Man.
That's
too.
a wonderful
Vincent Price
movie.
has a great voice too, but getting
Yeah.
back to the original, the problem is, okay, so you take this formula and you're invisible, but I guess it does a little something to your mind, right?
But you see, that was, I think, just so brilliant, and what Wells, again, making that statement about the dark side, because it wasn't just the usual, he meddled in things, man was meant to leave
Right,
alone.
yeah.
No, he went insane.
Yeah.
Right.
And loved it.
Right.
And it was all about drug addiction. And my
that's
mind
true.
is on fire and all of that stuff.
That's why you like that.
I've been trying to get there since high school.
Well, that's always been sort of a major part of science fiction, especially as it progressed, was the cautionary part. Like,
Right.
if you were going to look toward the future and travel to the future, a lot of times it was not a pretty future. So in other words,
Right.
People, let's be careful. Let's not pollute. Let's not, bomb each other. Let's
not become invisible.
and take drugs. Yes.
On kind of a little bit of the opposite side of that, though, is another movie I really love. I think, Matt, you originally turned me on to this a long time ago, but The Man Who Could Work Miracles.
Oh, yeah,
that's wonderful.
Yeah,
That's super
about
fun.
fanciful. Yeah,
Really fun.
Roland
It-
Young, who's in the
yeah.
Topper films.
It's almost like Frank Capra meets the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. It's like he's
again,
someone who has
that
no power
was-
to do anything.
That was Alexander Korda, and he and Wells obviously enjoyed a good relationship because he made a lot of movies from Wells' material. And again, H.G. Wells was around to do it. Now, there was some place, I cannot remember where, H.G. Wells' Rules of Writing. Have you guys ever seen this?
No.
Okay. Right in the morning, have sex with your mistress. Right in the afternoon,
your mistress.
have sex with your mistress. Then dinner, sex with your wife, right, and mistress or wife, your choice.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. I was reading this. I thought, where the hell did this ever, appear in, the Strand magazine and the back,
Very liberal high
Yes,
school.
But but that was H.G. Wells' apparent writing for me. And if anyone can find that, please email it to these guys.
This is real. It's funny. I wanted to ask you, do you guys know, is there any documentation, like film footage of H.G. Wells speaking?
Oh, yeah.
Forey Ackerman told this great story of how excited he was. So H.G. Wells, he passed away in 1946. And Forey Ackerman, as a young man, he was fortunate enough to see some kind of panel discussion with H.G. Wells talking, and he said, for years, I've read all these books, and so he had this vision of H.G. Wells having this big, deep, like Orson Welles-like voice, and he says he's there, there's an audience there, and H.G. Wells gets up to the podium and goes, "Today, we're going to talk about the future," or something like that. And he said he almost started to bust up because Wells's voice was nothing like what he had imagined.
No, he's like
It's a David Prowse syndrome.
He's like
Treat Williams in the Ritz.
the third tier loan officer at the local bank is really what he looked like. Yeah.
Getting back a little bit to the Claude Rains Invisible Man. As a kid and watching that movie today, when I saw it as a kid, the invisibility effects, as a kid, I had no idea how they did that.
Right.
It was so good.
It's still amazing to me.
And going back to it now,
Yeah.
I still think it really holds up.
That particular type of effect, to come upon that and be able to pull that off in the 30s is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
No, but the problem now is with any of the high definition transfers, very often they're done rather carelessly. These guys do not go back. They don't do a real check of their grayscales and everything else.
Right.
yeah.
And you see
Yeah.
faults now that actually are not there in other transfers.
Really?
And it's like, no, you've got to understand that HD is not forgiving.
It wasn't, it didn't exist back
It
then.
didn't
right.
exist, and you need to adjust the way the thing is done because it looks like John Fulton didn't know what he was doing,
Right.
and in fact, he knew beautifully what he was doing. So, actually, with the Invisible Man movies, I stick to the DVD and those green Universal Legacy boxes.
Yeah, I have those too.
I have those too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is absolutely the best way to see those.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, so what about Village of the Giants? Is that the greatest H.G. Wells movie
The
ever
best version of Food of the Gods that's
Just-
ever been
yes,
done.
beyond magnificent. Joy Harmon, come on.
Oh,
Yes.
you
Now-
brought joy to my heart.
So we're
Yes.
talking about two
Saying
different
that.
things. The novel was written quite a long time ago.
And
Right.
and needless to say, it's pretty different from that movie.
Yes.
And the movie
But
we're
it's
talking
closer.
that was-
It's
movie
closer
was
than Food of the
65.
Gods is.
Well, of course, Bernard
Right.
Gordon responsible for both.
Yes, that's correct.
That's right.
Yes.
And it has that great music.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun,
It was
dun,
Jack
dun,
Nietzsche.
dun, dun, dun,
I believe it was.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Tony Basil.
Tony Basil. Yes.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
And those giant ducks.
yes,
Giant
Giant ducks
And Ron-
dancing
Ron-
to the
Ron
Bo
Howard.
Brummels.
That's right.
Ronnie Howard.
Ronnie Howard,
Howard.
as Genius, I think
Johnny
his name is.
Crawford
And so,
is the one hanging.
Yes, Sean,
That's
can,
right.
can you tell us
Bikini.
again what this story is about?
Yeah, well, it's like these delinquent teenagers. It's
Hooligans.
Led by-
hooligans.
Bo Bridges.
led by Bo Bridges, right?
Young
Because
Bo
when you're
Bridges.
looking for
hooligans.
mean hooligan,
Yeah,
you go to
he's
Bo
the-
Bridges.
He's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, they ingest this substance, the Food of the Gods substance, and
Well,
all
they
grow-
call it goo.
goo, right? And they grow giants, and then like take over the town.
take over the
They do
town.
things, and then the parents are
Well,
gonna
they
listen
just
to
kind
them.
of dance.
Yeah.
Well, they
don't
do a lot.
really do anything.
and they do dancing. They do quite a bit of dancing, and they dance for a very long time.
Yes.
So, yeah. Down, down, down. They dance in slow motion. Which,
And-
when you get giant, you know.
Well, and the big titillation here for
Big
listeners.
titillation.
No, I'm just saying. So imagine if you take this stuff and you grow big. So the clothes that you have on, what's going to happen? They're going to rip off,
right.
right?
Of course.
So
Joy Harmon
Hey,
has something to wear.
I don't make the rules.
Yes, and for the uninitiated, I'm sure there are zero uninitiated listening to this, but Joy Harmon is the young lady washing the car in Cool Hand Luke.
That's right.
in case anyone-
That's right.
Right. Yeah. yeah.
Needs a reference point.
If you've never heard of her,
Yes,
look
you-
her up.
yes,
Do yourself a favor.
yeah.
And she now runs an extraordinarily successful catering business.
That's right. Yes.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
Cakes by Joy.
Yeah.
Really? Oh my gosh! I could order something from her.
Absolutely.
let's get her on the show.
Yeah.
With-
Cakes
with
by
cake.
Joy.
Yeah.
Horror and sci-fi cakes.
So okay,
probably
Oh,
do
and
that.
Tisha Sterling right before Coogan's Bluff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh,
So
Oh, everybody in that thing is. Oh
it is.
my god.
It is a fun movie.
I have that on 16 too,
Really?
Oh, good.
because
Lord.
that's a favorite of mine. Just the music, God,
Yeah.
I love the music in that
I
film.
know, so great.
And those giant legs that kind of have the hair.
with the hair on
and
them.
they're spread way too far apart. Like, what? It's just
Yeah,
it's weird.
So for
It's like the low rent version of the at scene in Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
So for listeners, actually, what I'd like to find out is, was this done before the Giants TV show? The
But Village of the
Village
Giants, the movie was 65, and then you're talking about the
Land of the
Land of the
Land of the
Giants.
Giants.
Because there
Irwin
were so
Allen,
many.
baby.
Because there were so many props Like there's so for listeners, there like you guys had mentioned these giant male feet and legs,
yeah.
but there was also a female top chest
the
area
bosom.
with with a giant like curtain brassiere kind of a thing. That one character, one small character is like
For like
holding
10
on.
minutes is like dancing
He's
around,
holding on, yeah.
And since they're giant and they have to eat small food, so they're eating little tiny fried chicken.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Land of the Giants was actually 3 years later. So Village of the Giants. Village of the Giants was the trailblazer when it came to giant teenagers.
Yes. Yes. Gary Conway. And
Oh, yeah, right, on
The,
Land of the Giants.
one of the greatest Aurora model kit box
the
covers
snake?
of all time.
Yeah, yes.
Was
And
that
a great kit.
Yes, and a great kit.
yeah,
Yeah. Was
yeah.
that James Bama who painted that?
Probably.
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's
Love it.
beautiful.
So this was a great model back with Aurora monster kits.
Oh, it was much cooler than
there was
anything we ever saw on the show.
So what
Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
there was like a giant snake, but it was actually a regular size
It was a
snake. It's the
rattlesnake,
little
right?
people
Fighting
that
it with a safety pin.
giant safety pin.
Yep.
And so this was a model that you could make.
Yes.
And that was really
I've got
cool.
a reissue that I'm going to make someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, Polar Lights.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
pretty awesome.
But I love, Land of the Giants has been playing on MeTV, and I've been watching some of those, and
I don't have any memories of that show. Like I remember.
it's way more entertaining than I remember.
Really?
First of all, the effects are pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think the problem with Land of the Giants might be the similarities sometimes to Lost in Space with Kirk Kasner
I think it was
being on the Jonathan Harris
yes,
side.
and that is true. But he's played
right. He's like that.
Played a little less broad.
Yes.
And everybody hates each other, which is great.
Right.
And what's really strange is that there's no romance whatsoever. in
Really?
this show.
Even though
no, nothing.
What's her name's in it?
Nothing.
Yeah.
But the oversized sets are incredible.
It was a regular normal world, other than it was giant. Right. There's not like.
No, it's that they
on another-
crashed and they
Yeah.
crashed on another planet and
Yeah.
everybody
That
I
is
mean,
like
that planet. They're just regular people, but they're just giant.
yeah, and it's not. They speak English and everything, so it's almost like they landed on an alternate Earth.
Okay.
And there are a couple times during the show where they are able to look. I think they were able to look into a telescope and actually see
And see
the
the-
regular Earth.
Oh
Yes.
wow. Okay.
But I thought it was the ones I watched, at least, I thought were way more interesting than I remembered. Certainly when it came to other Irwin Allen shows.
Right.
Now, of course, Gary Conway, an AIP monster veteran,
Yes.
One of my favorite monsters. I was a teenage Frankenstein.
and repeating the role in
How to Make a Monster.
very good.
Right.
And what Sylvester Stallone movie did he write?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
Over the Top.
Wait a minute.
arm
Wait a
wrestle
minute. Wait a
movie.
minute. Wait
Yep.
a minute. Gary Conway, the actor who was in I Was a Teenage Frankenstein, wrote Over the Top.
Yes.
Wow.
Does anyone have those action figures, by the way, over the top?
No, Larry.
There were over the top action.
Yes, there were.
Don't you remember they had and they had the little arm thing, and they sold a little arm table.
I don't remember.
Who made those? Because they must have been at the toy show the following year. They must have been laughed at and eggs thrown at them.
Probably,
That's
yeah.
nuts, though. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Who
great.
would have thought that the arm wrestling movie
Well,
would have worked?
Hey, you know what?
Those Golden
Sylvester Stallone was, he was
Wow.
big.
I didn't. I had no idea though. I'm looking him up. Like Gary Conway also wrote American Ninja 2: The Confrontation.
Oh, he was
and
a big
American
guy.
Ninja 3: Blood Hunt.
Yes. No, he was a big guy at Canon. Absolutely.
I
As a
had
screenwriter.
no idea.
Yes.
See,
absolutely.
only with Courtney Joyner on the show we can learn. This.
Oh, there you go.
I'm
telling
we
you.
love Gary Conway.
We're talking.
Yeah,
we're
we
talking
did.
about sci-fi trailblazers here.
Yes, we are. We've
Well,
got
he
it
is.
drifted. Yes.
Different
Okay,
kind.
let's have some Trailblazers. The Three Stooges.
Oh.
How are the Three Stooges connected to Jules Verne? I submit that to you. Courtney knows the answer to this, but does he? Any of you
You
guys?
know, Sean, you got me. I have no idea. The Three Stooges.
The Three Stooges go around the world in a day.
Oh, that's
1959.
right. Oh, yeah.
but he
Maybe
did.
the most faithful Jules Verne adaptation.
but
yet.
Finally,
Jules-
someone did it right.
But Jules Verne didn't write something that said, "And this has three Stooges in it."
It was
never
open
know.
for
Maybe an early.
It was open
draft
for
there.
interpretation. He never specified the number of Stooges.
That's right.
Yes.
So there you go.
You know, as
Best Three Stooges appearances with Charles Bronson in Four for Texas.
Oh my God.
That's right.
Really?
Oh wow!
Wow.
Yeah,
Only here on Monster
All comes
Party.
back to Charles Bronson.
that's what
Wow.
Joe.
It always comes back
That's
to
with Joe
Charles
Dorita,
Bronson.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Curly Joe.
James, you were going to say something?
No, as a Steve Coogan fan, I was curious about the last Around the World in 80 Days.
Oh
with
yeah,
Jackie Chan.
I saw that.
But
I mean, it has a kind of interesting cast. I mean, it's
I love Steve Coogan.
Yeah, me
But
too.
in
But it's
that,
really
still,
it's
it's
a vehicle for Jackie Chan, which is
yeah.
strange. I mean,
But the thing is, with even that version, actually, in some ways, is closer to what Jules Verne wrote, because the David Niven movie is really, it's just like a giant travelogue, which essentially the novel also is. It was Jules Verne's brother telling him about all these places, and he sat down in a library and wrote about it.
And this was
just recounted everything.
And it was a big deal when the movie came out, the David Niven movie.
Absolutely was.
Best
Picture of the year.
Yeah, Academy Award winning.
Yep.
And what's weird?
Mike Todd, yeah.
What's weird is Matt has mentioned, you know, when you watch film, boy, it takes a long time to get to this. When that film came out, you know, television wasn't a television of today, you know, and the great thing about the movie, it's very colorful, very bright, and they do go all over the world, and they go through, like, you see the circus and all these other events, and as a viewer back in those days, it's like very exciting. As a viewer of today, sometimes it seems like it
well, that's the thing. We
takes a
can't
little
imagine now what the real impact of something like Cinerama or CinemaScope or anything like that was. Because if you were in your living room, you were seeing something black and white and square. And kind of hazy or whatever. And then suddenly you're surrounded by all this color and scope and you know, all this gorgeous stuff.
Big
Around the World in 80 Days.
That was Cinerama,
Todd
right?
A.O. Yes. That certainly took advantage of it.
by Michael Anderson, the director of Logan's Run and Orca.
Oh wow!
Orca James.
And
Logan's Run.
and Operation Crossbow. Let's give
And
it-
Doc Savage.
You know,
Oh, I love Doc Savage.
well, you know, Mike Anderson, you know, had some good ones in the, you know.
Yeah, he had interesting
I'll tell
failures.
you, a great movie he directed, The Wreck of the Mary Deer, Gary Cooper and Charlton Heston.
Never seen that one.
He also directed, what was I want to say, The Naked Edge?
Naked Edge, yeah.
You know, with Gary Cooper and Peter Cushing, if anyone wants
What's that
to
one?
see
Really?
that.
What's that one?
It's a thriller about a razor killer in London. It was written by Joseph Stefano. It was his first script.
No.
Yep.
That sounds cool.
That was Gary Cooper's last film.
I'm going to have to check that one out.
Yeah.
What's it called again?
Naked Edge.
Naked Edge.
Naked
The
Edge.
Naked Edge. It has the word naked in it.
Cool.
Word Edge.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
Gary Cooper and Peter Cushing together. So.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a couple of other. I just wonder what you thought of. We were talking about like Herbert Lom versus
James Mason.
James Mason. There's a couple other, you know, strange films that involved Captain Nemo. That I wonder what you thought of. There's I think it was an Ron Allen film, a TV movie called Captain Nemo and the Underwater City.
I really
that
like...
was an
Was that-
Italian production.
The Amazing Captain Nemo is the one I'm thinking.
The big domes? Is that the big domes?
That's
When
the
they-
Underwater City,
Underwater
right?
City.
Robert Ryan.
Feature
was-
Robert
features?
Ryan and Chuck Connors.
Yeah,
Luciano
Robert Ryan.
Paluzzi.
Luciano Paluzzi.
That's
yes.
kind of a cool one.
I love
That's a
that
good-
one.
That was a theatrical.
That was theatrical.
And is that any good?
And
Yeah,
it
that's
was
pretty good.
directed by James Hill, who directed Born Free.
Okay.
And also A Study in Terror. If you
Oh, I
know
love that
film.
one.
Yes.
I love that
And
one.
that's the problem is, though, that, you know, poor Robert Ryan with kind of this duct tape over his wetsuit and everything, because he would have been a great Captain Nemo.
Yeah.
And the film has
Fantastic
got
actor.
some nice production values
Yeah.
and things.
There's
like
the giant
that.
stingray thing.
That's
and-
right. And it was, and also it was an interesting take on the Nautilus. And that model was recently sold at like Heritage or something and got a lot of money.
Really?
The
Really?
thing was huge.
From that movie.
From
Really?
that movie, because it really went away from the Disney design
Yeah,
and
yeah.
kind of a,
That's what I
if you
remember.
will, jury rigged Nautilus. It was kind of, you know, pasted
right.
together as best he could. And yeah, it's, that's an interesting film. A beautiful score.
But it had a great message too, you know. But towards the end, and gold and stuff.
Well,
and,
that was made when MGM actually started this kiddie matinee program?
Yes,
yes.
And that was one of the films from that.
I think I may have seen it at one of those child matinee things.
The other one I was thinking of, I get confused with sometimes, is in 1978. I think it was originally maybe a TV miniseries or TV movie called The Return of Captain Nemo.
That's the one I'm thinking of from
AKA
Creature Features, right?
Maybe. And Jose Ferrer is
Jose
is
Ferrer,
Nemo.
yes.
And that one has like Burgess Meredith in it, Linda Day George.
It's awful.
Yeah, I hear it's pretty
Yeah,
bad.
that's really
It has a weird little robot or something that there was in the
Really?
beginning, in the very beginning of Creature Features. one of the two different montages that they showed, Larry, there was a little clip from either one of those movies, and I can't remember which one it is, but there's like a little robotic kind of laser thing that's shooting at people, and I don't, I think it's from the miniseries,
Right.
And I believe now the Omar Sharif.
Oh yeah, that was like a TV
I believe
movie?
the Mysterious Island of Captain Nemo.
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah, that I've
yes.
never seen. Yeah, there's
that
a
any
lot
good?
more Nemo films. I
It
know
was
of, but
another international co-production,
Yeah.
so a little frayed around the edges. But also, we're forgetting another Verne project with Kirk Douglas, The Light at the Edge of the World.
I've never seen that one.
Yes, which he produced.
Now that's not the same as the island at the top of the world, right?
No.
So okay, I haven't seen either of those. I know of them,
Yes.
but I haven't seen them.
And I think actually he produced. Did he direct it? I can't remember.
Who plays? Does he play Nemo in it?
No, it was it was just another Jules Verne story, actually about an adventure. They were in a lighthouse, and it's kind of a big rollicking sea story. And
I don't know about
Kirk
that one.
having his own roots with Jules Verne because of 20,000 Leagues.
Sure,
Oh,
sure,
right, right.
sure.
That's
A
cool. No,
whale
know
of a
that one.
tale.
It's all true.
Yeah. Okay, so we've discussed Verne, we've discussed Wells.
I could go on and on.
No, not yet. I think we got to throw Edgar Rice Burroughs in there too, right?
Yeah.
Well, of course,
Yeah.
he came along later, and right around the World War I period when he really exploded. And of course, one thing that I don't know a lot of people are really aware of is that he created John Carter before he created Tarzan, and
Oh,
people
okay.
tend to kind of reverse that order.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and so let's go through this here because everyone knows of Tarzan and not so much of John Carter of Mars. And I think originally the stories that he wrote, it wasn't necessarily called John Carter of Mars. They were called something else.
Well, the original
Princess of Mars?
I know that it was called. I forget what it was called when it was in the magazines. It was done as
Right.
the Barsoom.
Yeah, a serial. But I think it was called the first one when they collected it all was called Princess of Mars.
Princess of Mars.
Princess of Mars. And then they did a number of books after that. And John Carter's thing is he doesn't travel to Mars in a spaceship. He kind of like in a weird way kind of wills himself there.
Right. Also, the Civil War.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Right.
And that has, even though it's science fiction, there's kind of a sword and sorcery feel to it. But just the sheer amount of strange Martian creatures and different species of creature that lives on that planet, I really do enjoy all of that.
If anyone wants to grab like the best edition of those stories, it is the Science Fiction Book Club edition with the cover and back pages painted by Frank Frazetta, and it is completely illustrated by Frank Frazetta.
my
There are
God.
about
Wow.
20 pen and inks throughout.
Oh, wow.
And it's actually there's several. They did Princess of Mars, Carter of Mars, and I believe what was it, Warlords of Mars?
Well, that sounds right.
Yeah.
And Frazetta illustrated all of them.
Nice.
Wow, that's cool.
And so these stories, these were done quite a long time ago, and there was a lot of interest in them, and there was talk about making a movie for ages. As a matter of fact, I think Harryhausen had talked
He sure
about
did.
doing an animated version of John Carter of Mars. And you imagine instead of like little ant people on the moon, think of these alien creatures that have 4 arms.
Multiple arms.
You know?
Yeah.
And
Big tusks.
well, and with these big tusks, and when you start to go through this in your mind, and you start to go through all the things you'd have to do, it gets to be very expensive. And it wasn't until years later when Disney decides to
Take
do
a crack at it. Yeah.
well. I mean,
but
my understanding.
botched the release of it.
It's
Yes.
it's
And
not
and the name.
It's not just one thing. It's a bunch of things that happened, and there were many people that were attached to this
Yeah, I know.
that would either work on it and then went away, and so the project was picked up or whatever. But the movie we're talking about from Disney is just called John Carter,
Right.
Which
eliminating of Mars was a gigantic
I just
error.
can't believe how
Yes.
anybody would have. I still don't understand why they did that. And I really enjoyed the movie. I was pleasantly surprised. When
I
they
think it's
finally-
way better than it was given credit for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It's
I
really fun.
agree. But why they made that decision, And because they did make that decision and the film bombed so badly,
Huge.
that's what scuttled the remake of 20,000 Leagues with David Fincher and all of that stuff. Was why they just wiped everything right off the slate.
I guess
too
the
bad.
logic was, they're going to try to be as faithful as they could to the story. If you recall, at the same time, there was another, I don't want to say franchise because they didn't know, but the whole Hunger Games came out around the same time. And so the talk was, everyone wants to go see this neat story about this young girl, and all these young people had got to go to this place to kill themselves, and no one cared about the old comic book story from back in the 20s.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it was an expensive movie. It was lavish.
And like you guys, I remember wanting to see the film. And I remember thinking, why do they call it just John Carter? People who don't know any better, they're not going to know. And so critics didn't like it. I remember it just kind of bombed. And I decided, I'm not going to see this movie. And I caught it on television
me
quite
too.
by accident,
Yeah,
like
me
you.
too.
And I'm watching it. I started to watch from beginning
Like
to
right
end.
from the
And I'm
beginning,
all,
I'm like, this is really
wow,
fun.
this is actually pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
This is actually
Great
really
effects,
neat. It's
unique.
really well done.
Moves along.
It does. It
It's
does.
funny.
And it's a shame. I think it is something that listeners should check out.
I agree.
You know?
I agree.
But it's really shame. Bad marketing, and I understand that there were a bunch of people at Disney in their marketing department, and I don't know if it was the head of the production studio. Everyone got canned. They all got
absolutely
fired
they did.
because
Rightly
this was
so.
one of them, a very expensive movie to produce. I mean, it's basically a huge write-off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I know that, like, other than Tarzan, of course, Edgar Rice Burroughs maybe isn't quite as represented as largely as like Verne and Wells in the films in Hollywood, but I do really enjoy the Amicus films of the 70s.
Oh, The Land That Time Forgot. I think it's wonderful. In fact, I proposed to the Burroughs estate, I guess the fourth in that saga,
So we have
as a novel,
Land That Time Forgot, People That Time Forgot,
In Time's Abyss.
At the Earth's Core. Was that also?
No, that was not.
That was completely.
That was a completely different.
So done in a Burroughs style,
yeah,
but not
In Time's
okay.
Abyss. And
What's
so
In Time's Abyss?
that was the third one.
Oh, okay.
And I proposed. I said, and they said, well, no one is really touching that series. And I came in. Well, I'll even say what I proposed. And why not? I don't know when I'll ever get around to writing it. But no, I said, okay. Here's my thought on it. Is that the survivors of the U-boat from the first? Yes. One of the sailors is drafted by the Gestapo to go back to the land that time forgot to capture the dinosaurs to use as weapons on the Russian front.
That's awesome. That's great.
I
That's
love
cool.
that.
And so that's what I was going to write.
And the whole like the World War aspect of it mixed with that Lost
that's
World.
very much the background of every single one of those tales.
Yeah, and I
So,
love
yeah.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
I love all the stuff with the Germans trying have to get along with the Americans to fight these dinosaurs. I mean, it's very cool. I mean,
Well-
that's again a surprise those movies haven't been remade today.
Well, and that's a good example of those films, even though you had the questionable effects at times.
yeah, they're men in suits, sure. but
I thought that the scripts were fairly good.
yeah, they're fun. They really are.
I thought
They are good. And I did a commentary on a movie called Arabian Adventure.
oh yeah,
And it was directed by Kevin Connor, who directed all those movies.
right.
And he was great. And we talked about all those films because the producer on most of them was John Dark, and working with Amicus. And the thing was that even though that first film, Land That Time Forgot, was a substantial hit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It really
and
did
that was
well.
and that was doing. Like, we're talking, Amicus. Up until then, they're known for their horror anthologies. Yeah, this is kind
Tales
of
from the Crypt.
Yeah,
and
this is
House of Drip Blood and
right.
everything. Sure.
This is new kind of territory for them, right? I mean, it was
absolutely.
interesting.
Why,
Yeah,
why have we not heard of the third one that much? Did it not get distributed? Or
yeah.
Oh well, no, that was just the third novel that was never
Oh,
made
it
into a
wasn't-
movie.
okay.
Yeah.
And-
And
Okay.
Sean, you bring up, boy, that would be a really cool idea. I think the concept of, hey, using dinosaurs as kind of like for military, it was touched upon in one of the later Jurassic
Yeah, the
Park.
last recent one did, which was kind of enjoyable. That one was a little better than the
It's
several of the
weird
other ones.
because I love the idea hey, let's bring these dinosaurs back and we can try to train them to attack our enemy.
Militarize
I don't
them.
know if it could work as well in light of the Jurassic Park theme, the
but
dinosaurs.
do it in
Period?
Period.
No, if you do it period,
that
then it's
could be cool.
yeah,
That's it. It was going to take place in 1930.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
No, that's the way you do it.
Yes. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Well, Burroughs did this whole series of books with, and I can never say this right, Polycudar.
Policeador.
Policeador.
Well, I didn't know, so I felt educated now.
But it's where At the Earth's Core takes place, the first
right.
of the series of novels. Now, I have not read these novels, but At the Earth's Core, the film, I have a particular fondness for.
Cast is so great.
The cast is great. The production design, just the set direction, everything about it, the colors.
Yeah.
And it's
And those
Carolyn
exploding
Monroe.
dinosaurs.
Exploding
Carolyn
dinosaurs.
Monroe in her fur bikini.
Oh my God! There's so much to like about that
colors,
movie. Even the little
cleavage.
yeah. Even those ape men.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah.
That's a great
That's one that I really enjoy, and I love the ship.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
the drill.
Yeah, the drill ship.
Kind
is
of
great.
a little bit of Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I saw that in the movie theaters, Matt, and
I think I did too. Yeah.
I saw that for free through Creature Features.
Did you?
Wow.
Yeah,
I-
Creature Features. You could write in, you'd get a free ticket to
Right,
whatever,
right.
and that was one of them. And I went with my mom.
Yeah.
and we saw At the
I like
Earth's
that movie
Core.
'cause
I brought this on. I brought this up in another episode. I was so excited about going at the movie theater. Advertised that one of the monsters from the movies was going to be at the movie theater. I was so excited. I'd seen pictures of all the monsters, and we get there, and what it was some guy wearing these like leather shorts and leather boots, and had like a stupid ape mask
my
on,
God.
running around going ah! And I was so pissed off. I mentioned this in another episode, and then we're watching the movie, and right in the middle of the movie, that clown comes running through the theater going ah! And I just wanted to
Really?
throw my popcorn. Get out, you stupid ape guy!
I really like the buddy dynamic of Doug McClure and Peter Cushing in that movie.
Yes, yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
fun, and Peter Cushing to me, he's fun in that because he's like the eccentric kind of scientist.
Well,
but
he
he's-
kind of had that the eccentric shtick.
Well, he's channeling his Doctor Who.
His Doctor
Yes.
Who. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I call that his, oh, I forgot my bumbleshoot performance.
exactly. Yeah.
But he's kind of rough and tumble in that
yeah,
one.
he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's funny in caveman with his umbrella.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah. And that's
No,
a
I
fun
really
one.
like that
That's
one a
fun
lot.
one, yeah.
And as you said, Caroline Monroe. Oh, my
baby.
God!
Oh, my
For the
God.
longest time, growing up, I went to the local movie memorabilia place in San Francisco, the Cinema Shop, and I found an 8x10 of her in her outfit, and that stayed on the wall, I think, till I left home. Yeah, she's so gorgeous.
And still is.
Oh yes.
Oh
totally.
my God, yes.
Yes. And a very nice lady.
Oh, she is.
All of those Hammer glamour ladies, I think, are all still gorgeous. Martine Bestwick, come on.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
she's so cool.
Yes.
Wow.
Martine's terrific. And starred in, as we know, a brilliant spaghetti western, one of the best ever made.
Ooh, which one?
A Bullet for the General.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Sergio Corbucci.
Damiano Damiani.
Cool.
Yes.
I gotta see this.
It's wonderful.
Well, if we're talking about sci-fi trailblazers, there are some names that we just don't want to leave out, at least for honorable mention, I think.
Sure.
Oh, sure.
One of them, George Méliès, Trip to the Moon,
sure. Yes,
a pioneer
yeah.
science fiction film.
Which is Jules Verne.
That's right.
There you go.
Yes.
Which is amazing little
Well, and
short film. It's,
H.G. Wells. I guess the moon shot is Verne.
That's from the.
But when you get to the moon,
right. It's just true.
that's Wells, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
moon- the
it's an
moon
interesting
people,
combination.
yes.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Also, as Larry mentioned earlier, Fari Ackerman, who was a trailblazer in sci-fi fandom, certainly.
True.
before
True.
Yes.
anyone
Yes.
else.
Editor
Absolutely.
of Famous Monsters magazine.
That's
right.
correct.
Indeed.
Ages.
Richard Matheson, Incredible Shrinking Man, certainly not a pioneer, but he was extremely influential.
Incredibly
The Twilight
powerful
Zone.
force in the genre.
Yeah.
And Rod Serling,
Sure.
certainly.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Well, of course, I have to throw out H.P. Lovecraft. And there was a growing movement toward this type of fiction, meshing science fiction with Gothic horror. And
right.
just some of the ideas that he brought and a lot of other writers at that time elaborated on. Instead of having the creature be supernatural, it's an interdimensional being. And it's an
Right.
alien.
Color Out of Space is a kind of pure science fiction at its core.
Sure. Oh,
You know,
yes. Yeah.
that then results in very horrific things.
But
Yeah.
Lovecraft always, whatever it is he was doing, he had created his own mythos. He stayed
Yeah.
within that, and
That
usually,
universe.
within that universe, and laid out his stories appropriately. And very often they were first person.
Yes.
That's
oh, yes.
true, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And usually started like from an insane asylum.
Oh, absolutely. I'm writing this with my
Right.
feet.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yes.
That's going to be my
With
memoir.
my feces.
But yeah, and even like Herbert West, I mean, there you've got, scientists messing with forces beyond his reckoning.
I think ultimately we'll have to do a
Sure. Oh, yeah.
solely Lovecraft.
We
episode.
should.
Yeah.
We
I
should.
really do.
Yeah.
There's plenty.
I'd also like to throw in Arthur Machen, specifically one story, The Great God Pan, which is at its core kind of a supernatural story, but it involves an experiment of piercing beyond the veil of reality mixed with a birth. And the offspring of this birth is this extremely wicked woman who, as she's described in the story, is very charismatic and very sexy, but just brings doom to whoever encounters her. And it's a wonderful story, and I would say it's probably one of my favorite stories when it comes to weird fiction. And so check that out. And I've also brought up Frank Belknap-Long's The Hound of Tindalos is great too. This is a creature, once again, beyond the realms of our dimension.
Right.
And they live in a dimension of angles as opposed to the curved dimension of our universe. And
cool.
the story is that there's a guy who's experimenting with time travel, and he does it through exercises that he does with his mind and psychedelic drugs. And it brings him to this place where he's beyond our dimension, and by doing that, he stumbles into this realm of these creatures where he really shouldn't be there, and they suddenly notice him.
Kind of like
and
a little From Beyond.
yeah,
kind of
and they
idea.
follow him back to
Cool.
Earth. And
That's
it's
cool.
great. It's such a great story.
Cool.
I just want to throw out just a couple. One of my favorites I think of as a trailblazer, and that's Ray Bradbury.
Sure.
I mean, he dabbled in all kinds of stuff, science fiction, fantasy, and horror. But I mean, he did write the great Fahrenheit 451, Martian Chronicles. So to me, he's one of my favorites. And Courtney, you mentioned like at the very top of the show, we just mentioned her name briefly, Mary Shelley.
Of course.
Creator of Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus. Some people feel it's like
The first science fiction story.
Right.
I mean,
We think of it as horror, but
who is or is not familiar with the literature. If I'm going to pull a plug in for a used book, if you can find it, The Ghouls, edited by Peter Hanning, was this wonderful collection of short stories that were the inspiration for all of these movies, including The Fly and The Foghorn by Bradbury, which became The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, The Color Out of Space, which became Die Monster Die, and on, and was recently done, as we know, by Richard Stanley. And it is a fantastic collection. And to read these novellas and these short stories, and because they're films that everyone is familiar with, and you get finally the symmetry of these two things put together. I think it's a brilliant collection, and with a foreword by Vincent Price and an afterword by Christopher Lee. What more do
wow.
you need? And you can
Nice.
find it usually in used bookstores for
Yeah.
about 50 cents. So
Really?
it's definitely worth
Great book.
it.
What's
is a
it called
great
again,
book.
Courtney?
The Ghouls.
The Ghouls.
Awesome.
There's also another book like that. I think it's called They Came from Beyond Space, or They Came
Yes.
from Outer Space. And it's another one that has like, the original story of the day the Earth stood still and a lot of stuff like that. And yeah, to go back to the original literary source is always fun.
That's cool.
I'm sure. I mean, there's so many other people we can talk about.
And we will.
We'll
We'll do another round of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll do like Trailblazers of horror and
Totally. Fantasy. Yeah.
down the line.
So, Courtney, I want to bring up, this Nemo Rising book is now available, correct?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Now, there's kind of some exciting news as far as a new version or a new incarnation of this book, too.
Well, the hardback came out through Tor a year ago Christmas, and I had decided I'd always wanted to kind of get into gaming, and I had absolutely no clue on how to do it. But I thought this might be something interesting to try. And I tried to interest some video game companies in it, and got absolutely zero response. And a friend of mine that I work with, Daniel Griffith, we work on a lot of documentaries together. It's actually his company. And he said, my cousin designs board games.
which are kind of big again.
Which are big again. And I called this fellow, Quixotic Games, Andrew Parks, and I sent him a copy of the novel and a copy of the original screenplay the novel was actually based on. And he came and said, yes, I think we can do this. Now, of course, here's the thing. I didn't realize, and then suddenly I do my research, they had been doing the Harry Potter games and all the Marvel games and the DC games and everything else. So it was a little easier to make their deal with 5345 Sepulveda than it is with Warner Brothers. However, I did have to pay for this. So they were very sweet and gave me a friendship rate. But when the design was done and they had done this spectacular job, it was like, now what's the next step? What happens? Right. And they took it to the company WizKids, which is one of the best, and they bought it. And it comes out in 4 weeks. We had our first debut at Origins, which is a big game board trade show in Ohio about a month and a half ago. And the reaction was just tremendously good. And so it's out for reviews now and is available. My gosh, if you Google it, it's I think it's available through at least 50 or 60 sites, including Amazon. And it will also be at Barnes & Noble and a few other
you brought a kind of prototype version of this and it is absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful, just gorgeous.
Yeah, they did a spectacular job. I was so pleased because I was kind of flying blind. This was all brand new to me, and so I trusted them, and they just came through just with flying colors. And it is Nemo Rising, Robor the Conqueror. So it is that. Oh, and here I'll tell you something really cool. They were asking, we were doing the designs of the characters, so they sent me something with Robor, and he had a beard. And I said, we've got President Grant. He's got a beard. Nemo's got a beard. So let's not do, because just playing the game, it would be visually confusing. Oops, I picked up the wrong card or something. They said, well, what do you want him to look like? So I sent him that still of Christopher Lee from Dracula, Prince of Darkness, where he's standing in front of the pyre, and that's what they copied. It looked exactly like Christopher. So there's my Christopher Lee connection right there.
Nice.
He is my Robor the Conqueror.
That's awesome.
I thought you were going to say that you sent a headshot.
No. So I shall remain forever in the shadows.
That's Jules Verne infiltrating the gaming community, which is
absolutely
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Love
awesome.
It. Yes. Love it.
He has before, but I'm very pleased with this and the fact that we've been able to take the project into another media and everything else. Because look, guys, I mean, you all deal with it and deal with it with the show and everything else all the time. It's not enough to write anymore. You have got to be able not only to do marketing, but you have to be able to write novels. You have to be able to write nonfiction and screenplays and everything else, because now you're supposed to literally be the master of all those different platforms.
Master of the world.
Which is not easy, but that's what that's kind of part of our responsibility.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
You hear that, Larry?
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I can't wait. Can we?
Yeah. And is there anything else? Do you have like a website or anything?
Yes, I have a very nice little website, ccjoyner.com, which anyone can go to and get a snicker or two. And I have a book coming out the first week of November called Unsung Heroes and Villains of the Silver Screen.
Nice.
This is a collection of photographs of character actors and actresses that were done by the director Steve Carver, and the photography is absolutely stunning. It's all done as the photographs would have been taken in the 1800s and their period. David Carradine's on the cover, and I wrote all the text, about 90,000 words.
Wow.
And awesome. And that is coming out the first week of November, and it's quite a wonderful project. So once again, the Westerns, and then
Cool.
Jules Verne.
You check all our boxes.
Yeah, good heavens.
Well, Courtney, thank you so much for being here.
Trailblazers and see Courtney Joyner.
A toast to see
Courtney Joyner. Thank you so much. This was a ball, and in the cool new studio, completely surrounded by all of our friends.
Yes,
it's our Nautilus.
Or Nuttyless.
Oh my God! You do have the editing software, right?
Yes.
Yes, good.
Time for listener shout out.
Shout out.
We have so many. Where do we start?
So many.
My God.
Thousands.
Go, do it.
This goes out to Camden Anderson from Orient, Ohio.
Camden Anderson.
Who is the proud owner of a Monster Party cap.
Yeah.
Bought for him by his dad, Bob Farmer.
Bob Farmer.
What a great
And
dad.
Bob writes, "Hey guys, I love your podcast. You guys kill me. I'm buying this for my 9-year-old son. He listens
cool.
too.
Oh,
Wait, his 9-year-old son listens?
Trying to
We'll try to clean things up a little bit.
trying to raise him right.
All right.
That's good.
Bob,
Okay,
you're
all right.
you're an awesome dad.
Yes, you are.
Awesome.
And Camden, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, some of our words are potty words. You don't want to repeat in school.
Yeah, don't repeat those.
Not everyone here has a potty mouth.
Yeah.
So
Please don't tell the authorities.
Yeah.
Also, a shout out to Alex Holbrook from Oaktown, Indiana.
Alex!
Longtime listener, and now the proud owner of a Monster Party t-shirt.
Cool.
Oh, my
Alex,
goodness.
we know it took a little while for us to get the inventory, so thank you for your patience. And thank you for your support.
Yes.
Absolutely, always.
Also, a shout out to longtime listener Tyler Horlings from East Gwillimbury, Ontario, Canada.
Tyler,
Canadian.
how's it going, eh?
Tyler
Is that James Mason?
Tyler bought one of our t-shirts a long time ago, but he's recently reached out to let us know that we were partly his inspiration to start his own podcast.
Hey, all right.
It's called A Conversation for One, and most of the episodes
You sure that's not Larry's podcast?
most of the episodes are Tyler solo holding down the fort by himself,
Cool.
which is a very brave thing to do.
Yeah, you got
Yes.
bigger cojones than I do.
So give a show a listen again. It's a Conversation for One podcast.
Cool.
Very nice.
Thank you, Tyler.
All right. Yeah.
Also,
What a dick. You were such a dick.
also a special little shout out to listener Denver Brubaker. You know, recently
Cool.
on our last episode, we mentioned Mark Hamill's comic book, The Movie.
Oh,
and
yeah.
for a brief moment, we were on Mark Hamill's radar because it was tweeted about, and he liked my tweet.
Cool.
And then Denver.
So that means we can call him at
Right.
home, right?
You're doing right now, right?
But Denver wasted no time by tagging Mark with a tweet saying, "Hey, Mark, you might want to listen to Monster Party. It might be right up your alley." So thank you,
Cool.
Denver. We appreciate the plug. And who knows, maybe Mark will listen.
Hi, Mark.
Hey.
Wait, my
it going?
phone's ringing right now. Is that Mark? Hey, yeah, come on over.
Also, a little plug for myself. I am
Yes.
I was a guest on a Stephen King podcast called
Really?
Chat Cemetery. Interviewed about my student film Lawnmower Man and the experience of making it. So you
Cool.
can check out that
I noticed that because that
podcast.
was on our tweet.
Very
nice.
nice.
What's it called again?
It's called Chat Cemetery.
Chat Cemetery.
clever.
And it's a recent
I like it.
And it's a recent episode.
I'll have to check that
Cool,
out.
yeah.
Check that out.
Yeah.
And last but
And your
certainly-
name is John
James
Gomez?
Gomez?
And last but not least, we have not one but two new podcast reviews.
Hey.
Oh, here we go. All right.
Uh-oh.
Strapping myself in.
First one is from Barry Eastham, who writes, "Love the show. You have put me onto so many great movies I wouldn't have found otherwise.
Yay.
I've only had one complaint on
no.
Wicked Wheels. You had a glaring omission. The General Lee from Dukes of Hazzard. Come on, guys.
I guess it's horror. In
Yeah,
a way.
right. Yeah, they're a bunch of
Sci-fi.
rednecks.
It's sci-fi.
Barry, I did see the show. You couldn't avoid it when I was younger, but I never got past Catherine Bach. What
true.
car? What
Yeah.
car?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
my
true.
God.
The other review comes from Mr. Fredro, who writes, "Two things in particular make this show great. The fun topics discussed each episode, but more importantly, the four gentlemen that host this fine show. Everyone has their own specialized interests and expertise they bring to the conversation at hand, yet they all blend well together to make for an entertaining discussion." Thank you,
very
Mr.
nice.
Fredro. We appreciate
That's a really
that.
great
Especially
review.
calling us gentlemen, which is
Gentlemen. Yeah.
Are you sure this is the show you're listening to?
We are extraordinary gentlemen.
That's right.
Oh,
Hey.
nicely done.
Well, let's remind our listeners that please, if you're listening to us on iTunes or wherever you're listening, please take a moment and write a review. We would love to hear from you, and chances are very good we would read your review on the air as we just
See?
did. Yes. And you can follow us on Facebook and YouTube at Monster Party TV, our Twitter handle at Monster Party HQ. Instagram is also Monster Party HQ. And you can find Monster Party swag on our eBay store, which is Monster Party Store. Easy to remember. Inventory at the moment is slightly limited, but there are still some items to be had. So please take a look.
Yeah.
On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Strothe.
And I'm James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
Discover a sci-fi trailblazer. Right, James Mason?
Yes, my friend. Discover a new. What are you guys doing? You must discover. Yes, I'm James Mason.
Stick around for another hour until he finally gets this.
Yeah.
Test.
Hey.
Test.
Shawn Sheridan.
James Gonis.
Give us a level.
Uh-oh.
I can hear you well in my cans. Ooh.
Try to hug the mic as much as you can.
I'm short, guys. You know, this is...
Would you like us to lower that a
Do
little
you want
bit for
the
you?
seat extender?
It's called a booster seat.
Booster seat. There we go. See, I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know kid talk.
Wow, boy, Matt, I sound great. Are these new?
Wow.
Are these
How
new
about
microphones?
this? Does that work?
Or is it just?
It's just a brand new you.
Okay.
Cool.
Does that work?
Wow.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. There we go.
Cool.
Yeah, we're piping
The
hot.
new Jen
Wow,
Brady.
look at 'em.
Hey. All right.
I'm lighting my... No, I just saw Ebora.
Ibora? You mean Ibra?
Ebora. Excuse me. Yes, you're right.
Jesus Christ!
I did
Who
mispronounce
the fuck are you?
I did mispronounce
Oh
Wow.
my God!
That's like getting the name of his kid wrong.
You
I
are an
apologize.
expert on some things, right? I mean, come
I
on.
believe so.
Yeah, you don't want to throw down that fucking gauntlet, man.
No.
Yeah, he's got you schooled morning, noon, and night.
No,
Okay,
I deserve
is
to be
he
slapped.
Is he a lobster or is he a shrimp?
Ooh, good question.
Oh, that is a good question. What do you think? What would you say?
I always thought prawn.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Just because he's Japanese.
Yes. Very good.
And
Yeah.
Ebby,
Prawn,
prawn.
Ibra.
very
There we
good,
go.
very good. For the longest time, ever since I was a kid, I always thought he was a giant lobster.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because prawns don't have claws like that, do they?
Well, no, prawns have it's one claw, and he
that's
only
right.
has
Yeah, that's
one
right.
big claw.
Yeah, that's
Prawns
right.
have
Yeah.
one claw? I didn't even know that. I just see a shrimp with a face on it.
They only have one claw? I didn't know that.
I didn't even know they had one claw.
They have a claw.
I've never
But
seen
wait a minute. Real shrimp don't have claws.
I know.
Well, they've got...
They got little tiny feet,
Yeah, but
but they don't
it's
have claws.
Ibra. You can
You guys are
use it
fucking
as
with my
monster.
head now. Like,
Yeah.
the one claw on a prawn. I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
Here's the thing that got me. I always thought, do you remember in Mysterious Island when the crab falls into the hot pit and they eat crab for
Yes,
days
yeah.
and days?
Yes.
I always thought, what if the same thing happened to Ibra, And then you had shrimp for weeks and weeks.
Can I just also poke a hole in that whole element of the film?
What?
They're going to eat crab for weeks. What do we know about shellfish and the sun?
Okay, look.
Where do
okay.
they store
They
it?
had crab that night. The
No.
next morning, it was done.
No. You bring up a good point. It was a very hearty evening of crab.
Yes.
There was a lost scene.
There was a
where
lot of
everyone was
vomiting
sick.
crab.
And he was fully cooked.
Yeah,
And he was buttery.
but even fully cooked, maybe a day. And you're messing with your life a little bit.
No, I know. I see your point. Look,
Yeah.
okay, so they ate the crab that
Why
night.
are you mad at me?
Because you're poking at the crab. I mean, I
I'm
love
poking the crab.
I love crab.
I don't
As a
know.
matter of fact,
Okay,
no,
this is not an attack on crab.
Now, I would just be a little more worried about the Captain Nemo hormones he injected into all of these animals.
That's true.
oh, what's it gonna? It's just you eat it and then it
Gigantism.
goes out.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
come on.
Gotcha.
What? It's gonna
That's a
have
very
any kind
good
of
point.
effect?
No,
Yes.
he has brought up a very good point. Yeah, all of a sudden, like 6 months after the mysterious island event,
a giant Gary Merrill.
Yeah.
No,
We don't want that.
maybe it would just be like a boil or something that
every circus in town, come see the giant Gary Merrill.
It becomes Village of the Giants then.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Uh-oh.
We'll get to that.
See, I don't think it would be that way.
Can we get back to Joan Crawford?
Yes.
I never really, I don't think I'm alone here. I never really found her too attractive.
I'll be
And
honest.
The last time I found her attractive was like The Unknown.
I love
John,
Unknown.
Yeah.
Joan Crawford and Betty Davis. I'm sorry, I never really found. I never was sexually.
You know what?
attracted.
You haven't gone back into when they
I've
were in
seen
there. Back in the
very
day,
younger days. I'm not saying they were.
Betty Davis was
I'm
a
not saying they're
honey.
unattractive, but there are certain actresses who are like, oh my god, you have the hots for.
Sure.
They always impress me to no ends as actresses, but
I would say
never
Betty-
a thing for them.
Betty Davis, though, in the earlier days, I feel like she had a cuteness, a spunkiness that added to her attractiveness.
Petrified Forest.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
But Joan Crawford, I didn't.
Okay.
Never
Joan
got there
Crawford
for me.
always had kind of a mannish quality.
She did.
And,
Yeah.
but that was what made her very good against someone
Right.
like Clark Gable and those guys.
Sure.
I was never that big on the movies she made at MGM. When she went to Warner Brothers and Humoresque and Mildred Pierce, of course. And the
Everybody loves that stuff.
Now, and
those are the ones I really
And
love.
let's be fair here, okay? When she became an item, this was at a time when
item.
maybe. Yes, she was an item, sir.
Okay.
I'm just saying, back in those days, she had a certain quality that was very unique and desirable. You mentioned the man look. I don't think she had like a man look. She had very defined features with her chin, her nose and the eyebrows.
Well,
and
her
everything.
eyes and
But her
everything, yeah.
personality in those movies,
She had a
too, was
Bruce
very
Campbell chin.
aggressive.
No,
broad
she didn't
shoulders.
have. Kate, the shoulders that's padding. Okay.
Whereas a young
it wasn't
a
bad.
young Anne Bancroft in Gorilla at Large.
Oh, don't even get
my
me. Don't.
gosh. So-
oh, man.
no, I
right to
mean,
the very end.
so-
No, but I mean,
Mel Brooks, I hate you.
of that generation, though, probably Barbara Stanwyck was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Young
Yeah.
Barbara Stanwyck.
Young
Once,
Barbara
when
Stanwyck, she was
once we get to
amazing.
Big Valley, forget it.
Oh, come on. You can't.
Yeah,
mess-
once we got to the
you
House
can't
on
mess
American
with,
Activities.
Victoria Barkley.
You're Mr. Double
Yeah.
Indemnity, aren't
Yeah.
you? It's that ankle bracelet, isn't it?
Right.
She
Once we got to McCarthyism, I was like, I think
Yeah.
I'm out now.
But as far as 50s, I think it's this Mara Corday.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Well, she was
Okay.
a playmate.
Gorgeous.
You did the Maricorday. Did I ever tell you the Longwear story?
No.
Tell us the Longwear story.
Yeah, so not for broadcast. Yes, as we adjust.
Oh no!
All right.
Don't play that game.
I'm turning it off.
Yes.
Okay, you're free to.
We won't, but we won't.
Yeah.
put it.
Okay.
Come on.
Mara, when she was married to Richard Long, they used to.
Richard Long from Nanny and the Professor and House
Yes.
on Haunted Hill.
Yes.
Twilight Zone.
And they used to, battle it pretty good.
Oh, really?
And they both
This is
liked
like
to
in the 50s they were married?
Yes, they both like to drink a little bit.
Okay.
And Peter Breck told me this story that finally it got a little embarrassing because if they got into a fight at a cocktail party or something, and his wife said, "Listen, you can't avoid." We can't avoid Mara and Richard. You work with them every day, and so they're going to be part of our social life. So Peter Breck's wife went to the prop master on the Big Valley and had all of their crystal recast in plastic. And they called it their Longwear so that at cocktail parties, if Mara got drunk and decided to throw a glass at her husband's head, it wouldn't cut him.
She seems so sweet.
Oh, we need to do this entire house in that.
There you go.
Now, Courtney, I have to ask
We drink
you,
a lot.
Why is that story confidential now? They've got to be long gone, these people.
Well, I just don't want any, tarantula, black scorpion fans,
Yeah.
But you see,
The giant claw.
here's the thing that gets me. You're a keeper of the truth. I want people to know. No,
That's a great story.
People laugh,
was,
but it's like
she was in Playboy, too,
Listen,
right?
listen,
Yeah, she was in
Courtney, you have information.
She sure was in Playboy.
You have information that I would kill for. And it's like you have these great stories.
Okay, well, speaking of Tom Weaver.
Yes.
All right, can we talk about this? Can we
Yes,
record this?
This we can absolutely
Okay.
talk about. Do you remember when Richard Denning gave that interview to Tom about Mara Corday, saying that she was really coming on to him heavy and
Yes.
making a black scorpion? So he asked
Yes.
Ellen Anchors to come to Mexico.
Yeah.
That infuriated her. And she dismissed that interview, like in every interview she gave to Paul Parler, whoever it was, in Film Facts, it didn't matter. That subject always came up.
Wow, poor Richard.
She was pissed off.
Poor
that
Richard Denning being fought over by Evelyn Anchors and Mara Corday.
I know.
Wow.
Just a living
Yes.
hell. The nightmare of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Do you think he had some bitterness about being killed by the creature or something?
Yeah, he had
He
bitterness
ended up
about
being
that.
the governor
I
of
think the
Hawaii,
rest of it
so,
was his
no,
bitterness.
It was just
That's
fine.
right.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Well, this is
we
great.
love Richard Denning.
Oh my! One of my favorites.
Yeah,
One of my favorites.
we do. You know,
Target Earth. Come on.
Creature with the Atom Brain.
Creature with the atom brain.
Well, Creature from the Black
Atom
Lagoon.
Brain. Yeah.
Creature from the Black Lagoon, and we all,
Well,
he was great in that.
Good at, he was actually great at playing villains and heroes.
That's right.
He could go back
No,
and
he
forth
was
very
good.
easily.
An affair to remember.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Yep.
No, you got.
Are you remembering?
Yes. No, he's the funny thing is people think, he's a good guy in that,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
I like how you react to these things like it actually happened to you.
Yes.
Come on, the Empire State Building, guys. Come on.
Yeah, no, it's great stuff.
Can she get there?
Can she?
He's waiting. Come on.
man.
What was the deal? And the tragedy.
Remember Kong?
Well, that's another tragedy.
That building. That damn building.
It's not the building's fault.
Isn't it?
No. If I remember correctly, it wasn't the building that shot bullets into Kong. Hello.
Emotional bullets.
The building acted as a beacon of home. It's
Is
like,
that-
hey,
what?
here.
How many buildings were there on Skull Island?
No, it's not.
No, it is if you're talking about the 70s, Kong.
Well, that's yes.
Yes. the Twin Towers.
Trade Center. Yeah, Trade Center.
You know what's so great when let's look at those screen tests for Kong. It just shows how smart Marion C. Cooper was, because there he had Randolph Scott and he had Joel McCrea. And he said no to both. He said, no, whoever plays Jack Driscoll has got to be an ape himself. Bruce Campbell. No, it's true. I mean, that's it. That's the parallel.
Yeah.
That's great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, this
Wow,
is great.
that was really condescending.
no.
Okay.
No,
he
this
had
is
to be a roughneck.
okay. All right, that's great.
All right, Larry, when you're done getting whatever out that you are doing right now,
All right, let's go.
then let's go.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
You know what the topic is, right?
I did. Trailblazers of sci-fi.
Wait, is that
Or
what it is?
science fiction?
Or Sci-Fi Trailblazers.
Sci-fi Trailblazers?
That sounds better.
That's
You like
what,
that?
That's
You guys
what
like
I thought
that?
it was.
You like
We're gonna
that?
keep it to like Verne,
Sci-fi
and Wells.
Trailblazers.
Probably not.
We
Poe-
might
not
only
Poe
we
because
might
that's
only
more
get
horror.
one in because there's so much to talk about.
We're going to start with Verne for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll
segue
branch
into
out
your
from
book
there.
and game.
But we don't want to go like weird fiction too much. As long as it's like Lovecraftian's fine because there's some science fiction in there.
And let's face it. I mean, I'm sure there could be a part 2 or part 3 down the road.
We'll get you back for Trailblazers of Horror, Trailblazers of Fantasy, Trailblazers of the
romantic
Westerns.
comedy.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Trailblazers, a fair to remember.
Oh.
That's music is just so haunting.
It is. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Shall we?
Shall.
Let's do it.
A little moment of silence.
Are you introducing Courtney or am I? Who do you want to do it?
You do it.
Okay.
Now, with lots of excitement and energy, and you've got some things you could rattle off,
Yeah.
like some things he's done.
Yeah. Have
Yeah.
a few
He
things
has a
he's done.
computer in front of him.
Yes, but I don't want him to go, and he did. Oh, let me look at this. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. That's what he's going to do because he does that every single time. Wow. 150 episodes.
Yes, 150
So
episodes.
wow.
6 years.
6 years. It's going to be 6 years if we don't start this. Okay?
All right.
Here we go. Did I ever tell you about the time where we would go to this? There was a bunch of condominiums that were being built right below my house. And so me and my hoodlum friends, we went to the condominium place, and there were some of them. We had a friend who lived in one of the ones that was completed. And we would go into the ones that weren't completed and have a party.
Yeah.
And I'd go with him, and we'd bring a bunch of our friends and some girls if we could get them, and we'd, light a fire in the fireplace and do karate kicks through walls.
No.
Oh yeah. And I was trying to smash in a skylight and fell through the skylight. And
No.
yeah, you
You know what's funny is when I was a kid, I would watch the streets of San Francisco, and I used to think, man, I'm glad my grandparents and my cousins live in the Sunset District, man, because every place else looks like it's bad, but now
our neighborhood wasn't even a bad neighborhood at all.
but it's like San Francisco. It's like it is not like that at all. It's
certainly not now.
No, that's what I was saying.
It's just
Like,
rich people
Can you-
and complete homeless people.
can
Like,
you imagine that
yeah.
the streets of San Francisco now would be completely different?
Yeah, yeah.
Streets of San Francisco?
Yeah.
I love that show.
You know-
I love the moment in Endgame, where you see Michael Douglas from the 70s. 'Cause it looked like he
Yeah.
off a set of street.
Yeah.
It's
No, that's
like
great.
amazing. It's like-
There's some great stuff in that film.
Yeah.
I was just talking to a friend of mine who stayed with us about, he's not in the whole Marvel thing, and I said, it's really, really good. And he goes, well, he wasn't into the whole hype. I said, there's a reason why so many people have gone to it, and the reviews and everything about it has been incredibly positive. And so I tried to explain in a generic kind of way. It's like, look, you don't have to be a fan of, superheroes. There's a lot of emotional.
But you do. If you
well-
Game Cold Turkey, just that movie.
No,
I'm
well,
very confused.
but you see, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, they're in pop culture. Where he may get lost is the whole Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Well, there's a continuity. I mean, you really do need to have seen at least
which
a
is
few of these movies.
The genius it's the genius of the franchise that does it that way. So it makes you want to. You have to see all of them to know what's going on. Was that my drink? I can't remember. It was.
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry,
But
Sean.
yeah, no, I did enjoy it.
Did you ever sniff glue when you were a kid? Well, no.
No, I just wasn't.
No, but you built models.
Yeah, oh yeah. Okay, lots of more.
Let's go.
Okay.
When Jack Chick died,
Yeah.
I tweeted R.I.P. Jack Chick. You made every day free comic book day.
Oh, that's nice.
What else can you say? It's
You were the stuff of my nightmares.
that too. Never thought I'd see
Those things freaked me out.
What things?
It's those religious tracks.
Cartoon
Jack
abortions.
Chick,
Cartoon
the little
abortions.
things. Where are you going to go? And they were little rectangular religious track comic books.
Yeah.
And they
Testing,
have
testing.
8, 9, 10
You're
pages.
going to hell.
And it would have a story about here's Al, and he everything's going great for him, and he thinks he's on top of the world, but he tells dirty jokes, and he's making too much money, and and then he winds up in hell, and
These little comics?
yeah.
No, I went to private school. I got all of this. I didn't. They
got
didn't
the
give me
Catholic stuff.
I got the whole Catholic
yeah, the
stuff.
Catholic stuff.
The Jack Chick comics you found on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Well, what's this?
Found on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
What,
Or
what kind of
or a
neighborhood do you think?
religious person would. We had
Yeah,
these
that's
Christian
one,
guys that
yeah.
would come to our high school.
Yeah.
And they want to, fix the hoodlums.
Right.
So they'd come around
That'll
us.
do it. Little comic book. That'll
Yeah,
fix
and they'd
them up.
come in and they'd give us these little tracks, and they kept coming back until one guy I know had a Hostess apple pie and just smashed it right into this guy's nose.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then,
Classic.
so then the
He's
next
going to
day,
hell.
a guy comes back from the same church, but he's like an ex-biker or something, and he's giving out the tracks.
Oh, that's great.
Wow. No.
Until finally the school said, you guys can't be here, which they should have done long
Yeah.
right,
before
right.
that.
No. We had Davy and Goliath, and that we watched all the time, and we had, church.
I have funny thoughts, Davey.
See, Goliath never says that.
Am I going to go to limbo?
I don't think he
I'm
ever.
unbaptized.
No, he doesn't talk like that.
I don't know what
Talks
he
like
looked
more like James Mason.
No, actually, what's
Okay,
funny-
so I need to tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Before I forget. So for our end thing, I was thinking that we do Keep America Strong, discover a sci-fi trailblazer. Right, James Mason? And then you do your James Mason, we'll all just jump on you.
Yeah.
Okay?
What should James Mason say?
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct, my boy, or whatever, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, that's correct, my boy.
It's perfect.
James Mason.
Don't practice it because it's getting too good.
Say, I'm James Mason.
You jump on me for doing
I
James
can't help it.
Mason.
That's what the show is.
It's like it's out of appreciation. I love that man's voice.
He's class, absolutely.
Don't ever stop yourself from trying an impression
does
because
he-
no matter what, it's entertainment.
Isn't it a bit unsporting to be using?
Okay, I don't know who that is, but that's fine
Hit
too.
Real bullets.
Yeah, that's a great Val Guest impression.
What? All right.
That's Val Guest directing tomorrow.